Morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are live. It is Monday, August 24th. Thank you all for being here. Hopefully you all had a great weekend. We are back. It is time to talk about the global capital equity markets. As soon as I go live, I see that we have a Mr. Trump tweet right when we go live. Why not, baby? That's how we start off Monday. Iran is completely collapsing, is what we've got from Mr. DJT. There you go. Iran is completely collapsing. This is going to be a pretty crazy week because not only are we going to have updates in regards to what's happening with Iran, not only are we going to have Kevin Warsh speaking at the FOMC, well, not the FOMC, the Jackson Hole meeting, FOMC September 16th, but Jackson Hole is probably going to give us a bit of a inclination on what happens going into FOMC. We have NVIDIA earnings, which is kind of the obvious elephant in the room. NVIDIA is really going to matter. They made some deals over the weekend, allegedly, that we're going to talk about. The stock, which was pushing almost 230 last week, ended up taking a hit right here. As we can see, NVIDIA 214.72, as that is, up 13% for the year, relatively underperforming the S&P 500. S&P took a hit last week, down about 1.5%. So this earnings is going to be very, very important to kind of see what ends up happening. And we're going to see how the market ultimately reacts to what goes on with NVIDIA. I think the other big thing that's going to happen is the convergence of all of these things into this week. So not only do you have NVIDIA, not only do you have Kevin Warsh, but you also have Basent, who today will be speaking at around, I think, 1 p.m. And in that speech, when he's speaking, obviously he's going to be talking about a variety of different things. And, I think those different things are going to be super important because the D-Day for Iran looks like it's starting from an economic perspective. And Basent talked about this last week. We're going to see what he says today. I think it's at 1 p.m. Eastern. He'll be streaming this. And basically, he did a post on the Financial Times over the weekend, kind of outlining all the different ways that, the market is going to be targeting Iran and the United States is going to be targeting Iran. So, we're going to see what happens. So, it's going to be very important. But this is going to be one of the broader ways to understand what's happening. Why are you guys saying the audio is quiet? So interesting, dude. The audio is quiet. All right, I'm going to put on my headphones again. That might fix it. I actually don't have my AirPods, so I'm going to have to put on my AirPods Max. Let me know if this fixes it. Okay, so I just put on my AirPods Max. Does that actually fix the situation? Does that actually fix it? That really fixed it, bro. That's so weird. That is so freaking weird. Why does it do that? I don't have my AirPods because I left them at home. That's crazy, bro. Why is it do it? Okay, so I'll keep the AirPods on. I mean, it doesn't make a difference to me, but that is so freaking weird that it does that. All right, well, I'll keep the AirPods on. For some of you guys, it was good before, but there was too many of you that it wasn't good. So I don't know why that fixes it, but for some reason that fixes it. Nonetheless, we'll talk about it, and we'll keep going from there. Chad says your floating hat is missing. That would triangulate your voice to the mic. That is funny, Chad. But what was also funny was Chad roasting me on this week's basis points. Hopefully you guys got to check it out. It was a fun episode. I think a lot of people enjoyed it. I'll have a lot of clips of that episode on X over the following days, but I'm putting a link right there in the chat for those that have not seen it. I think Chad did an awesome job. And it was super fun to get his perspective on what it takes for Palantir to win and what it takes to work at Palantir and participate in that winning. So people can check that out if you haven't yet over the weekend. All right, so we got a lot to get into. We got a lot to talk about. Basent this week, Kevin Warsh this week, NVIDIA this week. There is so much going on. Not to mention the U.S. and Canada are back in a trade war, which also kind of came out over the weekend. Literally last night, Carney and Trump started going at it. So I think we start there. I think we start with the trade war stuff, and then we'll get into everything. Also, by the way, the Truth Social CEO finally went on CNBC and talked about everything that they're doing with this API, and we will take a listen to that because I think that is also relatively important in terms of what is happening with Trump monetizing his attention. Bitcoin right there trying to go for 80,000. There was another announcement this morning that I think will be another reason why Bitcoin makes that jump into that 80,000 range. And I think the announcement that came out this morning is all but signaling that risk on assets and assets that theoretically should benefit when the United States prints money, like gold, should do well. And gold right there, up another 1% for the day. For those people seeing ads, I genuinely don't know what to tell you. I have not had ads in the middle of the stream for 4 years on YouTube. Nothing is changing right now. I don't know what to say as Bitcoin hits 79,000. Like, trust me, guys, I do not want to ruin the experience of thousands of people watching this for a couple of ads in the middle of the stream. So I don't know what to tell you guys, but I've turned it off on my side. That's all I can say. YouTube at the end of the day is something else. And I mean, until I like meet with a representative at YouTube, I don't really know what to do. But the ads are, hopefully it only happens once though, because last stream it happened like in the beginning of the stream and then it kind of didn't happen for the rest of the stream. So hopefully it's only once. And maybe that's just what YouTube is doing. All right, Trump, Canada, let's talk about that and then we'll get into everything else. This is the update on the new 50% tariffs.
Worth of Canadian exports to the U.S. Now, this will hit products ranging from wine and furniture to cement and dairy. Canada is vowing to retaliate dollar for dollar. Their new tariffs will be on sectors including steel, paper, and agricultural equipment. All of that set to take effect just after Labor Day. Now, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, he said in a Saturday press conference that this was a step that Canada never wanted to take.
We take this step reluctantly. Reluctantly because we recognize that some of these measures will raise costs and reduce choice for Canadians. Reluctantly because we recognize that some U.S. companies and some U.S. states are innocent bystanders in a dispute that they did not want. Reluctantly because this trade dispute is preventing Canada and America from doing so much good that we could do together.
Now, as for what exactly led these talks to fall apart, the U.S. side says that there was a last-minute demand from Canada to make sure that the auto tariff relief they were prepared to offer on cars would be extended to light trucks as well. Canadian Prime Minister Carney also said that the U.S. made demands aiming to limit Canada's ability to strike trade deals with other countries. He called that unacceptable. He also suggested that a lack of unity on the U.S. negotiating team complicated talks as well, and that fueled some chatter over the weekend of this reported divide between Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. And guys, the question now is how long this might go on. One round of tariffs on about 5% of what the U.S. buys from Canada, that won't have a huge impact on its own. But if the tit for tat continues, and given that there are no talks currently scheduled between the two sides, it's hard to see any of this being resolved anytime soon.
Okay, so the U.S. and Canada are once again going at it. What was really weird about this is that on, I think, Thursday, Trump tweeted that like he's taken off the 50% tariffs and that him and Carney are cool and they're chilling and all this stuff. And then I don't know what happened over the weekend, but they obviously decided to start going back at it again as Bitcoin hit 79,100. And that created some more volatility in the tariff market. S&P 500 right there, 764. The problem is we've got too many other corresponding issues that we'll talk about in a second that are not good for the market, that are a new form of uncertainty and volatility that quite frankly wasn't there even a few weeks ago, in particular bond yields rising. And now you've got this tariff thing compounding. I don't actually think this tariff thing is going to be that big of an issue because at the end of the day, like, you know, Canada is one of our biggest trading partners. We have to get a deal done. But the fact that it's ongoing and that, you know, we had a deal on Thursday and then by Sunday night we ended up not having a deal, it's annoying to say the least. And I wonder how much the market's going to tolerate. You know, how much is the market going to be like, yeah, it's fine. We can deal with all these different types of uncertainties that are going on. But, you know, another tariff issue is not something that's going to end up breaking things. And I don't think it's going to end up breaking things. But the fact that it's there, it makes it a little bit tougher on a week where you have the biggest earnings in history, which we say that every 90 days when we have NVIDIA earnings. But, you know, that level of volatility along with Kevin Warsh, now you have the tariff thing compounding it. It's just a bit aggressive. Not to mention the Iran situation is nowhere near resolved. And you know, we'll get some updates on that from Bessent today when he speaks about what they're going to do from an economic perspective. Speaking of Bessent, this is the reason why Bitcoin is running right here, up another $2,000, 2.85% in the pre-markets right here. I think it is due to this headline. And honestly, I'm not sure what to make of the headline. It's kind of a scary headline, but it's also, it's a self-inflicted wound by this administration. I mean, there's just not much you can say, because if we didn't have this Iran war, we would not have this yield crisis. 10-year Treasury at 4.7. This is what two senior Treasury officials told CNBC this morning. Treasury officials say the government could tap the Treasury General Account, the TGA, to help finance purchases of U.S. government bonds. Right now, that's worth roughly $950 billion. The two officials said that entire amount could be used to be pumped into the bond market. The Treasury surprised markets last week by doubling the size of its bond buyback, so the effect on yields faded quickly as investors questioned how much firepower Bessent actually has. On that interview you did on CNBC last week, he said, we are substantially ready to increase that $4 billion into something greater because they only did $4 billion. Now you've got Treasury officials saying, yeah, we'll pump a full trillion into the bond markets. And it's one of those things where it's like, hold on, $1 trillion into bonds. And again, they're not affected. 4.56 and the S&P fell 1.5%. We are still trading basically at all-time highs. Semis continue to have a pretty ugly week, and they, continue to have some sectors that are pretty bad. Lumentum and your photonics plays are getting hit, down about 5% right there. Coherent, I think, is also down about 3%. Coherent's down 6%. Why? AAOI, one of the poster childs for the photonics industry, ended up diluting again. $600 million. I talked to a friend over the weekend that bought this name at around $100 and, relatively has a decent sized position, not anything massive. And, he's super bullish on the optic space, but he's getting really, really tired of management constantly diluting, especially when one could argue they don't even need the money. Now, one could also say that they're doing this because there is so much demand that they need the money to be able to handle that demand, which is fair. It's just the problem is a lot of people are buying into the stock. And when you get diluted and you fall 15%, and especially they do this on Fridays after hours, which is the worst thing about it, it creates bad sentiment in the overall photonic space. It creates bad sentiment in the overall semi space when some of these companies do it. Bloom right there, that's down 3%. Intel was below $90. Intel is still below $90, 88, as that's down 2.3% as well as AMD up. AMD is down about 1.84%. Only NVIDIA is up a little bit. And we have some updates from NVIDIA last night as well. So I think the Treasury pumping money into the bond market is something we don't really know what to do with. It is definitely a little scary, just because they haven't done this in a long time. And again, the way to solve this, very simple: end the war, get inflation expectations to come down. Those yields will fall like a rock, but it's not happening anytime soon. In fact, the problem with this war is that they've got this new strategy for it. Bessent, this is what he tweeted this morning. President Trump has dismantled Iran's military capabilities, destroyed nearly 100% of its military factories, and buried its nuclear program. We are now entering the end game. At dawn begins an economic D-Day, the single greatest financial offensive ever marshaled against an adversary. The Islamic Republic has subsisted by dressing extortion as security guarantees. It has drawn strength from a calculus that regards Iran retaliation as certain and American enforcement as negotiable. Under President Trump, that era is over. And for those who fear the danger of defying Tehran, ought not to discount the costing test of Washington. The president has created the conditions to leverage every agency, every authority, and every action many assume we would never summon. Our objective is to sever every economic lifeline that sustains the tyrannical regime until Tehran stands alone. These are aggressive words. The question is, will that rhetoric actually match reality? And if it, and on worst case, even if it does match reality, does it really matter? Why do I say that? Because if we take a look at Iran's rial, their currency, it crashed to a record low of 2 million over the weekend per US dollar, with inflation that is now over 40%. So the Iranians, I mean, I know, Bessent is saying economic D-Day. The Iranians have been an economic D-decade because it's been pretty ugly in Iran. It's not like they have the best economy. It's not like their regime actually cares about their people or wanting to support the economy. Otherwise, they would try to combat hyperinflation, and they are not doing it. So I don't know what strategies, Bessent's going to have some speech today at 1 p.m. that he's going to be able to put up that is so unbelievably special and important that, gets Iran to capitulate here. I think he would obviously have to, get all of our allies to work with him as well. And he mentioned that last week, how many allies are actually going to put pressure on Iran. Realistically, China's the main one that could put pressure because they still buy all their crude. So it's one of those things where it's like it creates a level of, again, more uncertainty. And maybe this economic thing is effective. I mean, maybe they have something that's really, really strategic. Maybe it's a different form of sanctions that we haven't had over the past 20 years. And it's going to be something where Iran just has to cry uncle at some point. Lumentum right there, still down 5%. Bitcoin is 79,000. But if it's not, then I don't know exactly, how this is necessarily going to play out. Now, at the same time, the market is interpreting it as a bit more effective. Oil is down 2% in the pre-market. Maybe, I think, because of this Treasury announcement to buy $1 trillion worth of bonds, which we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but at least they're putting that out there. And this idea that economic D-Day is coming. So, maybe the oil markets are like, all right, if this is effective, we probably should sell oil right now because the price of oil should come down if we get closer to any type of ceasefire. But again, we just don't know. And I think Kevin Warsh speaking at Jackson Hole on Friday is going to give us a lot more of an understanding of what happens. Yes, you can absolutely be a trillionaire in Iran. Absolutely. I think we all could become trillionaires in Iran. It's just, the money is not worth that much. Truth Social. So we've been talking about this Trump API for a while. The Trump digital media president went live to finally talk about it. I mean, I listened to this interview this morning and I don't have any words to really express how ridiculous this is, but here's what he said about monetizing the president of America's tweets.
API, because that's been sort of in the headlines almost every day in one way or the other.
Sure.
And really the idea that the president, I mean, the controversy is this idea that the president of the United States is effectively, because his family owns part of this company, is monetizing his ability to make market-moving statements,
Sure.
and that companies effectively are paying to get access to those statements before the rest of the public.
Yeah. So let's start with the technology. The technology is a tried and true technology that's been in the social media system for quite some time, more than a decade. So all of your big platforms run APIs into high-frequency trading platforms, news and information services, prediction markets, you name it. So when I came into the role, I've been in the media business for almost 30 years. This was an obvious place to go. We have incredible data, we have incredible information, and it was in high demand. This was demand that came to us from the market. So we wanted to make sure that we satisfied that demand in the most brightly lit way. For us, when you have scrapers coming after your data on an ongoing basis against your terms of service, and you give them a product that they can pay for and do it in a legal way, all of these customers came and signed up.
The elephant in the room, you're avoiding the elephant in the room. The president decides what's going on, and then you can have it's almost like you'd have to do it. Which Andrews, it's monetized.
Yeah, no, I mean, the president is a shareholder,
the
right? He's a
position
minority shareholder. However, I have hundreds of thousands of shareholders. So I don't just have the opportunity.
But not
I
that
have
can
the
say
obligation.
there's gonna be a settlement based on some.
I mean, even that comment was crazy. The president, which the company is named after, it's called Trump Media, is a minority shareholder. And I have hundreds of thousands of other shareholders that bought it because the president put his name on it. I mean, it's just bad, but it's also like, what are you going to do about it? It's the wild, wild west. No one cares. It is what it is. All you can do is kind of sit back and be like, all right, it is what it is. That's what they're doing.
Tariff issue or something, and you're going to know before anyone else, and the market's going to go up 1,000 points.
I mean, here's what I would say. I think speed has been a part of information since its onset in the news space. It's the same reason why you have reporters on Air Force One. It's the same reason why you have a White House press room to get closer to the information.
So let me ask you a question. And by the way, my understanding is Twitter has an API that people access early as well, right?
As does Reddit.
And as does Reddit. So there are others that are selling this. And I think it's important that the public understands that. But they don't have a president who is a minority shareholder, and his name is not on the shingle. And so my question to you is, was there ever a thought where you said to yourself, we're going to sell this product, this API product, where people can get access early, except for any post made by the president of the United States? That to me would be the one shift that would change the equation. Meaning, I look at what Elon's doing with Twitter, and if he's selling early access, to me, fine, as long as it's not market moving, by the way, on behalf of Tesla or something else that's going to change, and somehow he's the beneficiary in that regard.
Sure.
Because it's the president and the public obligation, the question is, was there ever consideration about his posts in particular?
Yeah, I would say this. His information goes out all over the internet. It starts on Truth Social, it goes to Twitter, it goes to Reddit,
right,
and it goes to Instagram and TikTok. He's big on TikTok.
Right.
I heard that in the morning, and when he said he's big on TikTok, I lost it. Let's look. Okay, this guy thinks this is an absolute joke at this point.
Give a 50 millisecond advantage in that post, but that is the internet delivery, right? So all posts go out in real time. As soon as the president posts or any of our other creators post, it is public information. And it goes out in the internet, and if it's machine readable, machines are faster than people. That's why that little latency occurs. but it's a tried and true tactic. In fact, other services actually create even more latency. We do not. We put it out there in real time to all of our customers.
But the reason there's an advantage to it is that if you do have a machine reading it, you can figure it out.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it goes right into an algorithmic trading platform, and they start to look at context and figure out what their trades could be. And by the way, those trades could be right or wrong based on the context that they look at. And the other thing is that we want
the context being Trump's posts. Like, that is what the guy is not really addressing.
to license this not just to high frequency trading platforms, but to retail trading platforms. So you take it from Wall Street to Main Street, and then go on to other types of information services like, some of the bigger names that we just signed one of the largest financial data and information distributors at the end of last week. So we're super excited about that. We're going to go on to the AI world and license to large language models. And we're going to go into prediction markets as well.
Yeah, I get
the Wall Street to Main Street thing also killed me this morning. Because it's like, dude, first of all, high frequency trading firms work with prime brokerages. There's a difference between Robinhood and then something like a Clear Street, right? Or a JP Morgan or a Bank of America. There's prime brokerages that they offer to these high frequency trading firms that are executing trades in milliseconds of milliseconds at hundreds of thousands, if not millions of shares all at once. Those firms, when they get access to this contextual data, can actually make a trade that your Robinhood account or your Schwab account, your Fidelity account is never going to be able to get those quotes on those prices quick enough. A, because they're not, near a lot of these data centers where a lot of that information is being consumed. That's why so many of these firms are in Chicago and New York. B, because they're not built for that, because they're not high frequency trading prime brokerages. So when he says like, oh, we're going to bring this to Main Street, it's like, what retail investor is going to pay for this, knowing that what they're paying for is a Truth Social post by the president of the United States? There's not amazing content on Truth Social where people are talking about Broadcom. They're talking about like Second Amendment rights. They're not talking about Broadcom. On X or Reddit, at least I can understand scraping that data because you've got all these like Wall Street bets and financial Twitter and stuff. But on Truth Social, it's just Trump. And so, it was pretty fascinating to see this today. It's one of those things where it's like you're surprised, but you're also not surprised. This is the same president who launched a meme coin that went down 99%. So it's one of those things where you look at it and you're like, okay, what do you do other than acknowledge it's corrupt? But like, there's nothing that you or I can necessarily do. It's just kind of crazy that it's happening. I think the broader takeaway for retail investors is, hey, it's happening in front of you. And you can complain about it, which is fine. Everyone can be upset about it. I'm upset about it. It's not something I feel happy about. In fact, I have a really big Trump supporting friend. Like, he's MAGA to the bones. And over the weekend, he was just like, dude, I can't do it anymore. I can't support it. Like, he's MAGA till he dies. And he was like, I cannot do it. Even Joe Kernan on the show is pushing back. It's like, Joe's a pretty big Trump fan. I mean, what do you do? All you do is sit back and you're like, all right, this is happening. But I think the broader takeaway is it's the wild, wild west, and that anything can happen in this market if the administration is willing to literally sell information for $100,000 a month from the sitting president of the United States, which, by the way, that gets into the conversation that happened over the weekend. Trump executed a lot of trades in the month of July, and it was over 1,000 trades, averaging 50 trades a day. He spent more than $1 million buying, and he bought a ton of stuff. Berkshire Hathaway, Visa, the S&P 500, Palantir, MasterCard, the Industrials ETF, the Tech ETF, and he was buying in and out of it. So he was buying in June, selling in July, buying in July, selling a little bit more at the end of July. It's quite incredible. And so I think, once again, if the president of the United States is trading in the way that he's trading, then this is an administration that obviously cares about the stock market, which is good for us because they're going to try to keep the stock market elevated. But it also is an administration that is going to do whatever the hell they have to do to continue making money off a lot of the stuff. He sold some Meta, sold some Palantir, sold some Motorola Solutions. He also bought some of it. He also bought Moderna. So Trump has been able to benefit off that. But overall, 1,051 security transactions in June across stocks, about 50 different transactions every single day. And, it's kind of funny because it's like Pelosi has been seen as like the corrupt queen of stock trading. And now you got, the president of the United States literally doing it. So that entire bill they announced of like stopping Congress from trading, it's like never going to happen. It's all for virtue signaling. And this is the nature of the market that we live in. So all we can do is acknowledge what's happening and see it happen in real time. It is happening in front of us as Bitcoin hit 79,300. But the one thing here is that it does show there is a increased level of focus on markets. And, that's why I think they're trying to pump all this money into the treasury markets, because obviously the stock market, I think Besant knows, is on the verge of collapse, even though it's at all-time highs, if the credit markets continue to go higher and higher. And so it is not something I can support. It's not something I think a lot of Trump supporters can support. I mean, ever since the meme coin came out, I realized things were going to get a little weird during the Trump administration in regards to how they think of this and how openly corrupt it is. But it's also like there's nothing I can do, and there's nothing any one of us can do. So it is what it is, and it's happening. And again, the broader takeaway to me is that it is the wild, wild west. Anything can happen in this market if this is willing to happen as well. Robinhood right there, that's up 0.5%. Marvell, that's down 3.59% as that's been taking a hit. And Intel still down 2% as well. A lot of the semis continuing to take their hit. Is Micron red in the pre-market? Someone did a study over the weekend that if you bought Micron during market close and sold it during market open, you would be up 133,000% over the past year. If you bought Micron during market open and sold during market close, you would be down 99.2%. So the play has been to buy Micron at the close, sell it at the open. And it's like, if you compound that over the past year, it's like worked really well, versus if you reverse it. Micron right there down about 3.65% as all the semis taking a little bit more of a hit. Nebius as well getting wrecked, down about 3.85% as they increase their bond offering to $5 billion. Speaking of bonds, by the way, so Broadcom increased to $100 billion. Nebius increased their convertible notes from 4.5 to $5 billion. You've obviously got the big tech companies that have been increasing their bond yields. The Treasury is now getting ready to buy $1 trillion worth of bonds. Allegedly, that was reported this morning from CNBC, which is the reason why Bitcoin's running. This chart I thought was incredibly interesting. Only 3% of S&P 500 stocks now have a dividend yield that is higher than the 10-year Treasury note. This marks one of the lowest readings on record in data going back to the early 1970s, and this percentage has declined 40 points since the start of 2022. By comparison, 63% of S&P 500 stocks had a higher dividend yield, meaning you could buy like a Verizon, for example, and get a higher dividend yield for owning Verizon than the 10-year Treasury note back in July of 2016. So this is another reason why I think the market's a little worried about what's happening in the credit cycle, because now, as you can see on the chart right here, there's not many actual compounding assets that produce earnings and free cash flow that you could take somewhat of a risk on, a relatively mitigated risk from buying like tech stocks, and get a meaningful yield on it. Like there's 3% of S&P 500 companies that'll do that. So then you have a lot of people saying, well, why would I take a risk on Verizon or Altria Group or Coca-Cola when, even though Coca-Cola's done very well this year, when I could just buy a 10-year Treasury and lock in 4.7%. And, the fact that people are not, Coke right there up 31%, buying those 10-year yields as this thing continues to be at 4.7%. I mean, this thing with the Besant announcement should be back down to 4.5, at least 4.6, maybe 4.4 if you start really getting more confidence in there. And it's not, which means they're still continuing to, to sell bonds. And that's what's causing yields to go higher. Why is Rocket Lab down right now? Well, if all the high beta stocks are down pre-market, I would imagine your Rocket Lab, your SpaceXs of the world, those are getting hit. Again, AAOI announced some dilution. Peter Beck's going to have a new interview coming out this week with Molly. It'll be a podcast and a tour of their factory. So that'll be exciting to see. But Rocket Lab right there is still down 2% as that one's continuing to get hit. Lumentum down 5%, the S&P 500 down 0.18, and then NVIDIA slightly up 0.27. So let's talk about what's going on with NVIDIA. We've got two things happening. Number one, and this was confusing, but nonetheless, it is what it is. I don't know how to say it's good or bad. I mean, there's a bull and there's a bear case. The bear case is this is stupid because Perplexity is not worth $30 billion. So why the hell is NVIDIA trying to invest in Perplexity at $30 billion, which was the news last night, as per the information, a new multi-billion-dollar funding round. The bull case, that was the bear case. The bull case is Perplexity grew from $250 million to $750 million in annualized revenue. And, well, they are a company that should get a high valuation for that rate of growth. And their Perplexity computer product is really good. I'm sure a lot of people have used it before. It's basically like an agent on steroids. And they're going to be buying a lot of NVIDIA chips. So that's part of the reason NVIDIA's got to put money into these guys. Like, dude, I don't use Perplexity. I don't know how many people how many of you guys use it. Maybe I'm being a little too anecdotal and thinking Perplexity is not that relevant anymore. But if it was a public company, I don't know if it's worth $30 billion, man. I don't know. It's basically trading at 35 times sales. They're probably not profitable on any of that 750 million. Now, if they can grow that 750 to like 2 billion by the end of next year, they're growing at 100%. I guess, yeah, you pay 30 times sales on that. Like, that's reasonable. But I think it really is a question of by the end of 2027, how much revenue are they actually doing? Because in a world in which GPT and Claude are having all this pressure from open source models, which Gavin Baker over the weekend put out another note about how open source models are becoming more and more prevalent in specific tasks that are actually like important, kind of like, I think they're called like thinking tokens that are actually relevant and, you know, provide value for an enterprise. He said more data than open source is AI is taking share from OpenAI and Anthropic. Open source has gone from 28% token share to 62% share as per Vercel over the past 2 months. Super impressive given that the sum of OpenAI and Anthropic accelerated in July. So net token AI infra demand accelerated even more than the acceleration we saw at the frontier, which is bullish for the semis. And I suspect that Grok is growing even faster than open source. And we saw some of this in the ramp data already. So it's not necessarily bearish OpenAI and Anthropic, but it is one of those things to say that is Perplexity, which is kind of going after consumers that at the end of the day, I don't know how much consumers are willing to pay for models when all of this stuff is effectively going to be free, which means they have to target the enterprise. And I know their Perplexity computer product has been more geared towards enterprises, but if enterprises are looking at their token spend and they're looking at the effectiveness of open source, and then they're seeing the open source proliferation throughout other enterprises that don't necessarily have to pay for frontier labs for every, you know, remedial task, does that mean Perplexity doesn't have that big of a business model that can penetrate into the enterprise? And maybe it does. Again, I just don't know enough about them, but NVIDIA investing in them, it's smart on NVIDIA's end because this is another partner that's going to be buying your chips, but it, you know, brings up these questions once again. What is NVIDIA really doing with their balance sheet? And is it this most effective use of capital? The other big news on NVIDIA is that they're increasing their entire inventory, particularly with Vera Rubin, by around 17%. So some NVIDIA customers have notified that AI server prices will rise more than 15% in many cases for systems shipping early next year, including Vera Rubin and Blackwell. Bloomberg says the increases will vary by chip generation and memory configuration with soaring DRAM costs. So we can thank Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron for driving a majority of the pressure on why this is increasing, very similar to Apple with their consumer electronic products increasing those prices. Server makers supplying hyperscalers, including Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, have already begun notifying customers as the rest of these companies are developing in-house AI chips, but remain heavily dependent on NVIDIA. So obviously NVIDIA is having more competition, which is likely to put pressure on their margins inevitably. But, you know, NVIDIA is still the top dog in this race. It's just, I think the memory stuff is putting more pressure on their margins than the actual competitors, like the Google TPUs, because memory prices are going crazy. And at the same time, it's kind of wild because the memory prices are going crazy, but the memory stocks have, you know, not really recovered from their peak. Now, they're still up a lot year to date. SanDisk is still up 5x year to date, even though it's down 5% in the pre-market. But, you know, they haven't reached that level of excitement that they had back in June. And that's also why I think NVIDIA is up a little bit right here because, you know, they're increasing some of their prices. These larger companies are going to have to pay these prices, and it is what it is. We'll do a full preview of NVIDIA a little bit later in the show. Obviously, I think the earnings are going to be really strong, but I think a lot more is contingent on, quite frankly, I hate to say it, but bond yields more than NVIDIA's growth. I mean, we know NVIDIA's going to have good earnings. We know that NVIDIA's like fundamentally cheap if you assume that growth rate continues and you assume the buybacks accelerate over the next couple of years. But we can't be pushing 5% on a 10-year bond yield and expect NVIDIA to be, you know, a $5.5 trillion company anytime soon. I mean, maybe we can, but it's just unlikely to feel the risk to reward on that makes sense in a world in which Basent comes out and is ready to put $1 trillion into bond. Like, they're not going to put $1 trillion and use the TGA, the Treasury General Account, if they didn't think there was an issue. As Western Digital also is taking a hit right there, down 4% in the pre-market. Like, if they didn't think they really needed to intervene, or even if they're not going to intervene, they wouldn't put out publicly that they're thinking of intervening with the $1 trillion if they're trying to, you know, get the perception of it to be that they're going to, you know, bail the bond market out. If they didn't think there was an issue, and obviously there is an issue, you can't have yields rising at the level that they're rising, along with the uncertainty that we have with the Canada tariffs that were announced over the weekend. SpaceX right there, that's down 2%. Palantir down about 1%. ServiceNow, that's flat. A lot of the software names have actually held up really well, along with these Bitcoin derivative names. MicroStrategy's up 2%. Robinhood up a little bit as well. But BTC might be kind of the main beneficiary from everything that we are seeing right now. You guys are saying Nancy Pelosi has a new financial disclosure. Is that true? That is true. Okay, Pelosi, she bought Bloom and Intel. Wow, so did I 3 weeks ago. Is this her first Bloom and Intel purchase? Bloom down 4%. Yeah, this is new. She bought 10,000 shares of Bloom on July 24th. Where was Bloom at July 24th? July 24th? Bloom was at 215. Dude, we almost have the same price. Okay. July 24th, 10,000 shares. Intel, she bought July 24th. 50 call options with a strike price of 50, June 17th. So in the money calls. This is what she loves to do. Again, Intel, simple thesis. I don't love the valuation, but TSMC of America, I think they're not going to let this company fail, dude. I just don't think they're going to let this company fail. And I think that's part of why that $15 billion bond offering was oversubscribed by 20x. Intel, she bought July 24th, so she basically got it at around that same 95-ish price, 95 to 97, 10,000 shares and 50 call options. So she has 10,000 shares on July 24th and 50 in the money calls, $50 strike June 17th. And then Bloom, she bought 100 calls, strike price of 100, June 17th, along with 15,000 shares on Bloom. She also bought Bloom on July 28th, which was a day before the bottom. That was when Bloom was trading at probably low 200s. July 28th, no, 175-ish. It bottomed on July 29th. Pelosi coming in hot on two of the biggest semiconductor AI names of 2026, Bloom and Intel. There you go. You think she sold already? I have no idea. I mean, usually when she does this like deep in the money strategy, she doesn't sell. If I had to bet, I would say no, she has not sold. Like I know they both rebound. Intel barely rebounded. Yeah, Intel, I doubt she sold. Bloom, I mean, yeah, I got to like 250. Maybe she sold. But if she's buying in the money calls, she's expecting it to do a... She's basically telling us Bloom and Intel are going to get some big deals. Bloom's probably going to get a massive hyperscaler deal. Who knows? Maybe they get something with the government when it comes to building more data centers. And then Intel, obviously, I think she just thinks that company is going to continue to succeed, given it's the perceived TSMC of America. There you go. Pelosi. Both of these stocks, I think, are fundamentally overvalued. I think there's some relatively egregious valuations on these names, but I do think they are more important than their valuation, simply because Bloom is... No one's doing fuel cell technology like Bloom does, or has a partnership with Oracle or Brookfield, like actually proving that they can make this stuff happen in real time. And then Intel, again, there's just that many companies making chips in a meaningful way that have Jensen and Trump support together. So I think also Pelosi has those Uber calls she disclosed a month ago. So Uber, Bloom, and Intel have been her new position. Speaking of data centers, by the way, and this data center trade, you had Mike Novogratz, CEO of Galaxy, one of the data center neoclouds out here, saying a lot of this stuff that's anti-data center in the United States is just Chinese propaganda.
Texas governor put a pause to just make sure we're getting the right kind of players in Texas. And listen, if there's a populist movement against AI, data centers are a symbol of AI. And so even in Texas, they said, well, let's listen to what the people are saying. And so I actually think Abbott is doing what he needs to do to ensure Texas becomes and stays the power center and the data center of America and the world. You can't not listen to your people. And right now the people are scared. And so a lot of what they're scared around on data centers is not true, right? The water usage. I mean, listen, golf courses use 4 times as much water as data centers. But it's scared people. I tell you what's also interesting, Anthony, about 90% of the anti-data center stuff that you find on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook is coming from Russian and Chinese bots. In the same way, the Russian and Chinese bots sowed discontent around the Palestinian issue right after October 6th, right? Osama bin Laden's a hero. Like they created this fervor. They drop a virus into the heads of users. I mean, both a literal virus and a figurative virus. And it's really hard to stop once it's out there. Of course, the Russians and the Chinese want us to have as much discontent, as much friction, as much left and right hate going on. And they're really good at finding the hot button issues and stoking.
So look, I think there's a world in which obviously there probably is some influence from our adversaries in order to, have data center sentiment be against what the American interest is, because obviously China, if they can build more data centers, they can have a bigger edge on AI simply because they don't have the chips that the United States companies have. But I do think there's also a lot of genuine resentment outside of I think it's not black or white. I think, yeah, is there some Chinese propaganda, Russian propaganda going on? Sure, that's obviously possible. But I also think if you actually listen to some of these protests that people are having or tune into some of their live streams about what they're saying about data centers, these people are absolutely fed up with, quite frankly, wealth inequality and capitalism in the United States. I mean, I think we are having a deeper shift to the left when the money is so centralized. And if that money is being centralized in data centers where people don't realize they could buy a share of CoreWeave and participate in that because the stock market is still unknown to a variety of people, or to 99% of people, then they think all the money is going to the billionaires that are benefiting off these AI data centers. And then you've got the biggest data center CEOs like Dario saying it's going to take all your jobs. I mean, there just needs to be a way better branding on this. That's why Jensen gets so upset every time people talk about job loss, because Jensen knows the fate of his company lies on the political aperture of these politicians not feeling anti-data center to capitulate to their constituents, which means you have to be able to change public opinion. And right now, public opinion kind of sucks. So at the same time, the president of the United States is day trading these data center stocks. So it's one of those things, dude, where this is going to be an interesting week. We obviously got NVIDIA earnings. We got Kevin Warsh speaking pretty soon on Thursday. We've got Basent speaking later today about, quote, D-Day for Iran. We've got bond yields that continue to go higher. We've got Bitcoin that's running because the Treasury is signaling that they're ready to spend $1 trillion in buying back U.S. Treasuries to appease the long end of the curve. And at the same time, you have stocks at all-time highs. So a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. Thank you all for being here. Hopefully everyone had a good weekend. It is time to get back into it. Monday, August 24th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your asses up. Let's get into it. The S&P 500 opens down, basically flat, but still red, 764.19, as that is down 0.2%, and it continues to go red. NVIDIA 215, SanDisk, that's now, 7% on the open with NVIDIA. You guys said you didn't hear the bell? Okay, I guess StreamYard protected all of the people that wanted to hear no bell. You know what it is? It's probably because I selected reduce mic background in my settings when you guys said the audio wasn't working. And if I didn't take that setting off, it probably got rid of the mic background, and the bell ended up being mic background. So yeah, for those that refute the mute today, you didn't even have to press the mute button. Pound right there, 176, that's down 2%. Tesla, that's down 1%. Polar Express Bell is kind of crazy. Uber, 78.35. SpaceX, that's down 2%. Robinhood ends up going a little greeny green as Bitcoin continues to do its thing. I think it's inevitable. We're going to see 80,000 on Bitcoin. I don't think they're going to top us out at 79,329. I think we are getting there. I think it is kind of obvious with how the Treasury is acting. The question is, will there be enough momentum to hold above that 80,000? Micron, that's down 4.6% as that goes red. AMD's down 2%. AAOI down 15%. I saw the $600 million announcement Friday at 5 p.m. and I was ready to short it, but it was already down 10%. I was like, it's not going to go lower. It's down almost 15% from being down 10%, 140 to 104, 16% down as this continues to go red. Dilution on a Friday, the second Friday in a row for AAOI. They did one 3 weeks ago, then they did it again last Friday. Obviously, the market's kind of getting tired of this. Tesla, which hit 365 last week, that's down 1.5%. Rocket Lab, is that down? Rocket Lab 6968. Wow, loses the 70s. Okay, so high beta risk on stocks are absolutely getting killed at the same time that Bitcoin's going up. This is the first time all year we've seen a real divergence between BTC as a risk-on asset and AI stocks. Like, who would have thought Bitcoin would be green on a world in which Rocket Lab is down 4%? Usually they should be moving together. And the opposite's happening right here. MicroStrategy, that's up 1.2%. ServiceNow, that's up a little bit. Palantir, that's down 3% as that's getting hit. Nabesis, yeah, if the photonics sector is going down, the data center sector, the memory sector, they're all kind of intertwined. They're going down as well. CoreWeave down about 3%. Bloom Energy, which Pelosi just bought 15,000 shares of, down 7%. She is now bag holding a decent chunk of shares right there. Intel also down 3%, 87.20, as that continues to get hit. Amit deserves a no-bell prize. That is a good one. That is a very, very, very good one. Do I ring the bell again for all the people that didn't hear it now that I picked off that setting? Do I do a redo? Everyone's like, no, we don't need it. Your settings were right the first time. Coinbase 188, that goes up. Honestly, the only stocks that are green right now are these like Bitcoin stocks. Circle's up 3, Coinbase is up 1. Some of your fintechs are up. Walmart's recovering a little bit after its worst day since 2022. It was down 9% on Friday. AppLovin, that one still continues to be in the gutter, 304, as that continues to go red. ARM's down 3%. Wow, so many of you guys saying yes. Everyone says they hate the bell, but you take away the bell and you miss it. And you miss that's what the bell does. It makes you miss it when it's gone. VCX, this fund that owns Anthropic, that's down 4%. Dude, the Anthropic IPO, Zoom's down 1% as well. Zoom also holds a public stake in Anthropic. I think I've concluded I'm not buying the IPO. I think I've concluded. Like, I did some more research over the weekend. I think this S1's going to be good, but I think they're going to pump this thing to $2.5 trillion, and it is not going to be sustainable. Like, if Anthropic, simple argument, if Anthropic gets put into the bucket of Bloom and Intel and Nebius and CoreWeave and SanDisk, do we really think it's going to be the lone star that holds a multi-trillion-dollar valuation when Meta, and I know Meta is different than Anthropic, but at the end of the day, like, you know, Anthropic is going to be bought by a lot of the same funds that buy Meta. Like, these are massive, massive institutions that are buying multi-trillion-dollar companies. Meta can barely hold a $1.5 trillion valuation, and it does $200 billion in revenue and is profitable. Like, I just don't see the upside for buying and holding during the IPO. Maybe it works out obviously over like 5-10 years, but in the short term, I think just like SpaceX, we're going to have better opportunities. As SpaceX flips green right here, 137.25. So, yeah, not a fan of this IPO, but obviously I want to see the S1 and see what ends up happening there. Sam Altman did an interview over the weekend. We'll talk about some of that interview. Some clips came out in which, you know, he's basically talking about the IPO and timelines, and you could kind of tell, like, he's basically acknowledging that the market's not just going to succumb to his whims of how he wants AI to be monetized, because you actually have to produce value and not just sell tokens. And so it looks like they will do an IPO, but that's probably going to be early 2027. I think they're going to want to see, can Anthropic have a successful IPO before they decide to go public and actually have some type of sustainable growth. Wow, SanDisk down 9 is kind of crazy. I don't think anything happened to the memory story over the weekend that's that dramatic. I mean, outside of this NVIDIA increasing their GPU cost by 15%, a lot of that has to do with SanDisk, SK Hynix, Samsung, Micron having this massive pressure on all their customers with memory pricing and memory inflation. But I don't know if that's a reason you sell off SanDisk as aggressively as it's being sold off right here. Micron down 5%. Was there another reason over the weekend around memory that I missed? Because I didn't see something that would create that type of a headline, unless the memory names are just in the algo of high beta and they're all just getting sold off for that reason. IGV, that's only down 0.5%, which is actually holding up really nicely compared to SMH. Apple, obviously up on the day, 310. SMH down 2% as that continues to go red. Oscar is up. Oscar, I bet Verizon's probably up. Verizon is up. Coca-Cola is probably up. Coca-Cola is up. UNH should be up. UNH is up. So all your safety names should be green on a day like this. Meta also just flipped green. How about Google and Amazon? Google is green and Amazon is green. Okay, so the Max 7s getting some of the rotation as the semis continue to sell off. CrowdStrike at 194. CrowdStrike and Palo Alto, they have earnings coming up in the next 2 weeks. I am not the most bullish on that. A, these companies have done incredibly well this year in terms of their stock prices. B, their growth rates are just not anywhere near what would justify how the stocks have moved. Now, maybe the level of importance around cybersecurity is, but the risk to reward there seems kind of tough. Granted, maybe they have crazy accelerating growth because of Mythos and all the fears that it's created, but that's something where I would not want to take the risk if I was not necessarily in those names yet. To see if you're in it, you kind of just hold on and let the thesis play out, as I think there's a heavy margin of safety on those stocks. CoreWeave 85.90, that's down 2%. With the rest of these neo clouds, Intel, that's still getting hit, down 3.4. Where's Moderna? Is that one getting wrecked? That one is good. Goodness gracious, Moderna. 134. It was at 150 last night. That's also pretty ugly. That is also pretty ugly. Nebius on track to potentially lose the 300 range. Hims down 8%. This is just an ugly day. 3D DRAM is the headline. Oh, you know, I did see this headline. I didn't look into it that deeply. Samsung says going fully 3D with ZHBM cuts DRAM power 70%. I just said 70. Oh my goodness. Power 70%. Why can't they just put 70? Why do they have to spell out 70? Who spells out 70? Just put 70, the number. 70% and hands 100 watts back to the GPU. The primary advantage of ZHBM is a dramatic reduction in I/O power. Okay, this is way beyond my technical expertise, but if that's really the headline right here, is that really the headline? 3D printed DRAM with HBF. I've heard of HBF before. D-Matrix says its 3D DRAM moves data 6 to 7 times more efficiently than HBM4 on measured silicon. Oh my goodness. I mean, if that's the reason, this is just another optimization argument for why the memory names are getting again, the memory, wow, Micron 908. The problem with this is once again, the fragility of these narratives towards the memory stocks is that any level of optimization means that the traditional boom and bust cycle comes back into play as being more of a bust than a boom if there's something that interrupts the boom, which would be memory optimization. Now, we've heard tons of these headlines. They've all been buying opportunities over the past 2 years. Maybe this one's going to be exactly the same as Moderna continues to get wrecked, down 8%. But nonetheless, that's at least enough of a headline to explain Nebius 205, why these stocks are down. NVIDIA's got to fall today if everything else is falling. Yep, there you go. NVIDIA down 1%. Interesting. Yeah, I do not know anything about 3D DRAM. I'll try to do some research on it today. I saw that I saw the tweet, but I didn't pay attention to it. Like, I didn't think it was like a headline. Apparently, it is a headline. Bloom down 7, CoreWeave down 4, SanDisk down 9, Apple that continues to go green, Lucid's down 1.2, Spotify's down 0.5%, SK Hynix as well down 9%. Amit, what is going on? Okay, so if we have to give a kind of lay of the land in terms of why things are red, Basent basically said today they are ready to put $1 trillion into the bond market to buy back the long end of the curve. We spent all of last week talking about the 10-year treasury, which is not budging from 4.7. It needs to get down to at least 4.5 for the market to calm down. We're not there yet. Basent's announcement of that trillion, which Basent didn't literally announce, but 2 treasury officials leaked it to CNBC, is not doing anything for bond yields. I think that's the first issue we're dealing with. Second of all, Canada and the US are once again fighting with 50% tariffs that both sides are threatening to each other. I think that's actually less of a reason, we need to be too scared about, because it's just like at the end of the day, I think they're going to come to an agreement. But nonetheless, that's more uncertainty that enters into the ecosystem. And then you've got Basent, who's going to be doing a speech at 1 p.m. today around Iran and where he thinks they can attack Iran from an economic perspective. NVIDIA down 1.2%. And you put those three together, $1 trillion of buybacks for bonds, new announcements on economic sanctions for Iran, which means we're not de-accelerating the conflict. And then the Canada-US tariff war reheating, you get a red day. It's pretty simple to say. You get a red day when you put all three of those things together. On top of that, the algos, take one of the semiconductors down. They kind of take all of them down. Nebius, Bloom, SanDisk, Rocket Lab. I guess this memory headline over the weekend is enough to create some fear right there. And again, the key word is fear. None of this has to necessarily be the sky is falling, but if it creates fear, these stocks are obviously going to react. Lumentum right there, almost losing 800 as that's down 7.5%. Did Trump just tweet? Trump just tweeted, okay, Trump, Canada has been ripping off the United States for years. Their ridiculously high tariffs on our farmers and farm products has made life impossible for those great American patriots and has long created a $60 billion deficit between our two countries. Not sustainable and not anymore. On January 1st, 2027, tariffs on all cars, trucks, both large and small, automotive parts and steel will be increased to 50%. Build in the U.S. and there are 0 tariffs. Canada will be treated like a state no longer. On trade and in other ways, also, they are among the worst nations in the world to deal with. They feel entitled, and we don't need Canada. They need us, in capital letters. They do 95% of their business with the U.S. They do 95% of their business with us. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald Trump. Yeah, I don't believe this. I think that he said the exact same thing on Monday of last week, and by Thursday, he got rid of the 50% tariffs. I actually think, as the high beta stocks continue to take a hit, I think he's just saying this to say this. I don't really think in 5 months we're going to have 50% tariffs on Canada. I mean, we can't afford to do this, bro. We already have enough inflation. We don't need Canadian steel getting inflated and creating even more price hikes. Like, he actually doesn't have the leverage here. I know Trump wrote The Art of the Deal, but like the leverage, I don't really think, like, have you looked at the credit markets? The leverage is not on the president's side to create more volatility. I mean, maybe you can say the stock market's at all-time highs, and so, you know, stocks can go down 5% and they'll still have a good year. It's like, sure, you could do that. But forget the stock market at this point. The credit markets keep screaming. It's not going to be about stocks. It's going to be about much bigger issues like financing our country's debt obligations at freaking 5% when it should be closer to 4% or a full percent higher, which equates to hundreds of billions of dollars. Like, I don't think he has the leverage here to just be like, yeah, Canada sucks. Now, if he thinks Carney doesn't have leverage either, then it's going to be tit for tat. And eventually I think we will get a deal, which is why I don't take this that seriously. But nonetheless, it obviously is creating a little bit more volatility. Palantir right there, 173. As that continues to go down. This is also off the news that we got on Friday with Citadel. For those that missed it, Ken Griffin said they shed 80% of the risk from their situational awareness portfolio, which means they sold off a decent chunk of the assets that they got on July 29th. And so, you know, from that perspective, it's bullish because you don't have to worry about Citadel selling, but it's also bearish because it's like they pumped and dumped it. And this is after August 11th, where they said, hey, we think all these AI stocks are getting ready to be systematically bought again. And then a week later, Ken Griffin announced that they ended up selling gold. I mean, Nebius went to 280. If they got it at 140, I mean, yeah, I would imagine. Even like if I was running Citadel, like, dude, we got it at 140. It's at 280 in 2 weeks. Yeah, let's take some profits, right? So you can't even blame them. Obviously, you know, they manipulated the entire market. You can blame them for that. But like the nature of them selling that quickly, it's kind of obvious they would do that. The problem is, who do they sell it to? And if they sold it to retail, you know, retail ends up holding the bag right there. NVIDIA, that's down 2%. Micron is getting ready to potentially lose 900 as that continues to get hit. Moderna trying to stabilize around 134, but that one's still down 7%. Google, Amazon, and Meta are the ones that are up today. Bitcoin, is that at least holding on? Bitcoin, oh no, Bitcoin, 4 red candles in a row. We were at 79.2, we're at 78.2, so about $1,000 has been taken off the 2,200 that we were up on the day. SoFi as well continues to go down 1.8%. I don't know why HIMS is down 10%, but HIMS is heavily shorted. And so I would imagine the shorts are having a field day with everything here. And, you know, that's probably creating a lot more ugliness in the broader market. Nebius 202, Micron $1 away from losing 900. It's going to lose it. Micron's losing 900. There it is. 899. I wonder where it bounces. I wonder if this is just one of those days or if it can kind of chill out around this 900 range. There's probably going to be a ton of buyers that step in here psychologically at 899. But there's also going to be a ton of shorts that come in. Duolingo, is that green? Duolingo is red. Flat on the day. Well, down about 0.5%. NVIDIA continues to get... Yeah, there's no way NVIDIA could go up with the type of announcements we're seeing today. In fact, I mean, them raising their cost by 15%, like it's kind of... I mean, it's obviously bullish for NVIDIA, but once again, it's like, well, it's technically going to create more inflation just on the CapEx level, not on... Because, you know, Google and Amazon are going to have to spend more money on these chips. And if Google and Amazon have to spend more money on chips, do they, you know, take some of that margin and put it on their customers? Because... you know, at the end of the day, they're already negative free cash flow. So can they really afford to continue spending that much money? Bitcoin potentially getting ready to lose 78,000 as that is going down. Again, this Trump Canada thing, I really think that's going to be resolved way quicker than we think. But I also don't know how much leverage either side has to be able to make this happen. 50% on January 1st, 2027 is the argument that Trump is going for on automotives, passenger vehicles, steel, and trucks. Rocket Lab down 4 as that goes red. Why are Visa and MasterCard up? Well, Visa and MasterCard are safety plays in a market that is obviously very high beta. Visa and MasterCard also were 2 of the top 10 stocks that were bought by large investors in Q2. I think for that reason, they haven't really, participated massively in this bull market, but incredible companies, massive cash flows. They are safe and sustainable no matter what happens in AI, even if you assume agentic commerce or stable coins or any of that stuff. Nothing is going to take away Visa and MasterCard's moat in any significant manner. And so I think some of the large investors are just buying these blue chip companies because, if you're a Bill Ackman or you're a Buffett or you're a David Tepper, some of this volatility, you've got to be a trader. You can't manage tens of billions of dollars and just be buy and hold on some of the most volatile names that are out there, right? That quant I talked to him basis points last week, his argument was these fund managers are allocating money, or these institutional investors are getting allocations of capital because of their ability to reduce volatility in the process of delivering gains, not embrace volatility to end up getting the gain. So someone giving you $100 million doesn't want to see you bet on SanDisk at 900 and ride it up to 1500. They want to make sure you bet on SanDisk at maybe 1400 and it doesn't go to 900 without being hedged, which means if it goes up to 1900, you're also going to be hedged. So your gains, end up being S&P type level of gains, not massive situational awareness type gains, but you also don't have 67% down months like situational awareness. So I think a lot of the big guys, like, Disney was in the top 10 stocks. Like, I don't really think Disney's that exciting, but at the end of the day, if AI is not going to commoditize Disney or it's not a boom and bust cycle, like many of these picks and shovels plays, you can justify buying Disney, getting a stable dividend, and hopefully seeing the stock match the S&P over an aggregate number of years. But the Teppers of the world, the Gersoners of the world that are buying Micron, I think they've got to be trading in and out of these stocks massively because there's no way they can sleep at night knowing they put $1 billion into Micron and it could be down $200 million the next day. Because that could happen. It could be down 20%. We've seen that happen multiple times. Micron right there down 7%. As that continues to go red. Celsius, is that slightly green on the day? Celsius is up 3, kind of being put into that Coca-Cola category. Pepsi probably is up. Pepsi is indeed up about 2%. As that also goes green. Broadcom. So UBS came out today and they said we are reducing our fiscal year target on Broadcom by $5 billion because our checks indicate we have been too aggressive on Broadcom TPU unit shipments, and we now see only 6.4 million shipments in calendar year 2027. So I think that's why Broadcom is down today, along with all the large cap semis. I think even if you take away $5 billion from AI revenue, which gives you $130 billion instead of $135 billion, Broadcom is not, a stock that should be in the low 300s. And it's not in the low 300s, but obviously it's down from the 420 range last week. The cybersecurity stuff, I looked into that more on the weekend. That hack on VMware, it was not that big of a deal. Like, that's not why this thing is down. It's down because of the sell-side analysts feeling a little iffy on their OpenAI Anthropic revenue, which is why Anthropic going public and having the liquidity they need to pay their suppliers like a Broadcom is going to be super important. But we're going to need to get the S1 to have a better understanding of that. Again, Pelosi did buy Bloom and Intel today. Bloom right there getting a little recovery back to 190 on 185. Micron touched 899 for like a millisecond. It actually got to 898 and then it bounced. That's kind of what I think people expected. It's not that bad of a day for Micron to just have the bottom fall out and lose 900 that easily. If it does go back there, then sentiment is really bad, but it's at least kind of holding that $900 level. McDonald's is probably up today. McDonald's is indeed up today. The value portfolios should be doing okay. Even Berkshire should be up today. Berkshire, there you go, up 1.2% as that is green. Apple, obviously a big part of that holding, $311. Again, for those complaining about ads, I'm really sorry about that. I genuinely am not sure what to do. Like, maybe I can call a YouTube representative, but trust me, it's been 4 years. I've not had mid-roll ads on. I'm not changing that for a couple bucks. Like, I'm not going to ruin the viewing experience of everybody for that. So I do not know what to do about that, but thankfully it happened like in the first 10 minutes and no one's complained about it. A couple people complaining right now, so maybe YouTube's not hammering it, but they're off on my end. Like, can promise you that. I think YouTube's just trying to get everyone to buy premium, but like not a lot of people are ready to buy premium. Broadcom right there, 362. Okay, Micron second test below 900. We're going to see if this one actually bounces or if it continues to stay there. Call Sundar. Dude, you guys think I have Sundar's phone number on tap? If I did, what would I text him, dude? What would be my first text to Sundar? It would have to be something interesting. Chad says, I have a theory that they have to IPO because they need liquidity and VCs are not willing to invest at the current valuation, so they will IPO and rug pull retail instead. I think that theory is very, very practical for Anthropic. I mean, SpaceX did the same thing. As much as I love Elon, it was a rug pull. I mean, come on. It was a rug pull. Basically opened at 150. You have to be in the big boys club to get it at 135. So you basically opened at 150, runs to 230, gets everyone excited. And it's not like Elon rug pulled everybody. It's just, you know, at the end of the day, the valuation was absolutely unsustainable for the level of growth that SpaceX was putting up. Not to mention there was only 4% of shares that were available. And so it ended up being a really ugly IPO for retail. Now, if you bought in the low 100s, congrats. But at that point, sentiment was so bad that, you know, most people either had to DCA, and it's hard to DCA when you don't have any money because you bought the IPO in the first place, assuming that it would be stable. And it absolutely wasn't. And on Anthropic, I mean, there's a reason Leopold was ready to sell some of his Anthropic. I know he was getting liquidated, but the fact that he couldn't really find buyers for his Anthropic and you have more Anthropic liquidity in the private markets popping up, it means some people are ready to sell. Let's not forget the VCs have been in this name since freaking $20-30 billion, many of them below that. Micron getting back above 900. They want liquidity. And by the way, the VCs aren't stupid. I actually interviewed a VC. That interview is coming out in a couple of days. And I asked him, does Anthropic have a moat? And he said no. And this is a guy who manages a couple $100 million. And he's like, the reason they don't have a moat is because anyone can switch the model. Like, it's not that complicated. You didn't need to have some PhD level analysis on why Anthropic doesn't have a moat. And his broader argument was just like, look, if they're going to keep spending on tokens, they're going to need a lot of money. And so the VCs also probably understand, hey, maybe this is a business model that's not as sustainable as we thought. Let's take our money and run. We're up 5,000x, dump it on all the hype that people want to bet on with Anthropic because they see these ARR numbers and they go goo goo gaga over it. And let them deal with it in the public markets. We did our job funding it 4 years ago. We're going to take our profits. Like, to assume that wouldn't happen and that wouldn't play out like that and it's just going to be a perfect IPO is naive. Now, maybe it does. Maybe it's a great IPO. But if it's not, there will be better opportunities to buy that stock at a better valuation than, you know, $2.5 trillion. Rocket Lab right there, that's down 4% as this continues to get hit. NVIDIA is also investing big in open source. Yeah, not to mention, I mean, the company that's building the chips for Anthropic is the same company that's competing with them because Anthropic's also competing with NVIDIA chips by partnering with Broadcom and all these other companies, right? To build open source models that one day might be frontier level. Now, again, Anthropic's models are still amazing and they're still, you know, generating tons and tons of revenue that theoretically could be profitable. We'll find out during the S1, SMH down 3%. But it's all a question of how sustainable is that token generation before, you know, other models come in and potentially take away some of that market share. And again, I don't think the open source stuff is killing Anthropic anytime soon. It's just the threat of that is something the stock is going to be judged on every time there's a headline. And so to say it's not going to be volatile, I think is crazy. It's going to be one of the more volatile stocks that's out there. NVIDIA losing 210 at 209.50 as that one continues to get hit. How about Qualcomm? Is that green? Qualcomm 156, that's down 2.4. Along with the rest of the semis. The 10-year, are we getting some relief? 10-year still at 4.7. It was at 4.72 this morning, so a little bit down. Oil is still at 85, a little down on the day, but not down as aggressively. I think this is all just liquidity before NVIDIA earnings. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, but, you know, it's also not fair because NVIDIA tends to run going into earnings. Like the past 3 quarters, NVIDIA has ran up into earnings and then sold off after. So it's kind of weird that it's selling off today going into it. Now, maybe Wednesday morning it's going to gap up and then Thursday it's going to sell off. But, you know, on a day where SanDisk is down 10%, NVIDIA is going to be tough for them to be the name that goes up. Uber, that goes green. That's still up. ServiceNow back to 130. Your software names are coming back. Moderna at least breaking up from the 130 range now to 135. UNH, that's green on the day. So a little recovery here. Meta's at 550. CoreWeave continues to get wrecked. I mean, CoreWeave and Nebius have lost pretty much the entirety of the gain. CoreWeave, all of it. Nebius has lost like 90% of that earnings move after last week. Bitcoin, nice green candle right there from 78. Remember, the big news about Bitcoin last week was not only is the Clarity Act getting ready to get passed in September, but the CFTC is ready to make in law everything that the Clarity Act is promising if Congress doesn't get the 60 votes. So I think you have the Treasury buyback of liquidity coming into the bond market, which is a signal to buy assets that are, kind of antithetical to U.S. Treasuries, which in this case ends up being Bitcoin, gold, et cetera, which is why those are running. And you've got the Clarity Act almost being guaranteed by the CFTC. I mean, it does make you think that the excitement is coming back. On-chain liquidity is becoming massive. You have a lot more people trading on-chain. If you look at the biggest trading terminals in crypto, they are generating hundreds of millions of dollars of volume per day. And so you're having a lot more people trading again, which is important because that type of excitement is needed to, in general, get the majors to start making a run like Hype, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. Amit, didn't SanDisk introduce this new HBF memory? So why are they down? That's a good point. SanDisk was one of the companies, along with Qualcomm, that talked about HBF on their earnings calls. Again, I'm not technical enough to understand this 3D DRAM thing, but I guess the street's interpreting it as being competitive with SanDisk's version of HBF, or the street's just being stupid on this, which is what I actually think is happening because they see a headline they don't like and they immediately, assume the worst. But it's obviously creating some pain right here, which is why we're getting hit. SoFi, 1884, that one's trying to come back. And then, you also have this guy over the weekend, Kashkari, not making things better by saying the Fed could meaningfully raise rates.
At that last Fed meeting that was held, you dissented from the broader decision to hold interest rates steady. You said there have now been 5 years of persistently high inflation and sort of like, let's get on with it, was my understanding. You were saying, let's start to possibly raise rates. You mentioned a quarter of a percentage point. Are you still thinking that that's necessary next month?
Well, I want to get more data is yet to come between now and our next FOMC meeting, so I don't want to prejudge things. But what's happening in the Middle East, the conflict with Iran, is now a big driver of what's happening on inflation because, as you know, energy goes into every facet of the U.S. economy and on inflation. And even if it's driven by geopolitical factors like that, ultimately it does affect inflation. Ultimately, it does have a bearing on the Federal Reserve's mandate. And so the longer that goes on, the less confident I am that inflation is going to return to target. For 5 years, we've been saying inflation is going to return to target in the next year or two. Mm-hmm. It just keeps getting pushed out. Eventually, we're going to have to do more. And I'm not sure if we're there yet. We need to see more data. But I don't want to prejudge the next meeting. But I'm not feeling confident right now that inflation is heading back down to target in a short period of time.
And I mean, look, you got interest rate expectations for a hike that went from 32% to now 40% over the weekend. So you've got one of the Fed presidents, Micron, losing 900 for the third time today, basically making the case that inflation is too persistent and we have to do something about it, which implies that they might end up seriously thinking of raising rates. And then you've got the Fed rate hike probability is kind of reflecting those statements. An 8% move in a couple of days is, not something to kind of not pay attention to. It's 10% away from being 50-50. If it's 50-50, if that flips to 51-49 and they actually do pass a rate hike, it's just not going to be pretty going into September. I think we will supersede it because the earnings growth, which I hate to be a broken record, but the earnings growth is the kind of core thesis that's carrying this market. But at some point, earnings is having to deal with like a ton of macro shit in regards to rising yields, in regards to oil prices, in regards to the Iran war, in regards to a rate hike, that sometimes earnings growth might not matter as much, especially when the market has already baked in a lot of the premium from earnings growth, because that's what everyone talks about to justify this bull market, which is what everyone should be talking about because this is the best earnings growth we've had in 20 years. But there is also these other macro things that can't be ignored. And right now, I think we're all trying to see how it really plays out. SanDisk still down 10, SoFi still down 1%. Reddit 153.52 as that continues to go green. And that is up. Then why is crypto up? Because if the Treasury is ready to pump $1 trillion of liquidity into the bond market, which again is not net new money because they're not printing it. This is money they already have. So it's different. It's not to be interpreted with the Fed opening the money printer. and buying mortgage-backed securities again. If they did that, I think Bitcoin would explode to 100,000 like overnight. Not literally, but you get my point, right? Like if the Fed actually said we're getting ready to, like if real quantitative easing, yeah, we would have some fun with Bitcoin. But the Treasury signaling this $1 trillion of buybacks is enough, I think, for sentiment around an asset that theoretically should benefit when stuff like this is announced in our monetary policy. It's doing just that. Not to mention the Clarity Act stuff, hopefully getting ready to pass. And so I think that's what you were saying. And look, the way to play Bitcoin, you guys know my take. It's been Hood. You get an actual business. If Bitcoin collapses and Hood goes down by 20, 30%, you still own a real business that eventually has other things besides Bitcoin. Vlad is very incentivized to make sure shareholders get a return. He, is building this company with a lot of passion and innovation. MicroStrategy, you get higher beta to Bitcoin, but I don't think Saylor really cares about shareholders. He just cares about acquiring Bitcoin. And that's his job because the shareholders are letting him be subsidized with the full authority to buy more Bitcoin. So I think there's a lot of ways to play it. Hood is my favorite. IBIT itself is just an easy way. You could sell calls on this, right? Generate some income. But if Bitcoin actually is the hedge towards the end of the year, it would be quite incredible. And there's probably 4 or 5 stocks that would really benefit from that. Mastercard, that's up 3%. Visa, that's up 2%. Both of those names continuing to get some love. I mean, ETH's been running as well. Is there a world where BM&R can get into that $40 range if ETH can get back into that $4,000 range? Maybe, but I think you would need a lot to go right. And Bitcoin would have to be, getting ready to get into that $100,000 range, I think, for ETH to see that level of momentum. By the way, Michael Burry is short CoreWeave. He announced on Friday. He added to his Palantir short. He added to his semi-ETF short, SOX. And he officially shorted CoreWeave. So, for a lot of people wondering why Michael Curry, am I becoming Michael Curry? Why Michael Burry decided to short Nebius over CoreWeave? And, the argument was like, oh, like he thinks Nebius is egregiously overvalued compared to CoreWeave. Well, now he's short CoreWeave. So he's a bear against all of it. And he's expressing that through his short holdings. Micron losing 890, bro. As that continues to go down. We have to name Chris Curry now. That's what we have to do for our boy, Mr. Christopher Patel. Chris is Michael Curry. Oh my gosh. So at the end of the day, I know there's a lot of stuff I'm throwing that's a little bit more negative, but those are the headlines. All those headlines ultimately turn into a picture of larger negativity. You've got bond yields that are not coming down. You've got the Iran war that's not coming down. You've got NVIDIA raising prices, not really good for the hyperscalers. You've got this memory headline that I just found out in real time, which I guess is why SanDisk is actually taking a 10% hit. And then you've got Canada and the US going back and forth. Having said that, we have NVIDIA earnings on Wednesday, and maybe that kind of changes the narrative along with Kevin Warsh. Which, by the way, this Kevin Warsh thing on Jackson Hole, which for those that don't know, Jackson Hole is this like annual thing that they do to outline monetary policy in Wyoming. I think it's going to be a nothing burger, dude. He's not giving guidance. He's not saying anything that the market really needs to like grapple with because he doesn't want the market to grapple with anything. So I don't think he's going to say anything that's really going to change the market, but everyone's going to be hyped up for it. So I don't know if we really see any meaningful any meaningful reaction from the stock market when War speaks. Chaz says, I think Burry is overvalued. I think the problem also with Burry right now is that, he's tapping into a lot of fear that is out there. And he's down on a lot of these positions. Like on CoreWeave, he's up because he shorted on Friday, but on Palantir, he's still down badly. On SOX, he started shorting this thing at like 350. Like it's at 500. It's down from 600. Okay, he's still down pretty bad. NVIDIA, he still has $100 puts that, look, as bad as sentiment can get on NVIDIA, I don't know if it's going to $100. Like, a lot of these names have not necessarily worked out in terms of shorts, but they create a lot of fear. And, a lot of that fear gets attention. Micron right there at 892. And that attention, continues to create some more pain. As NVIDIA almost loses 209. What if NVIDIA misses? I don't think NVIDIA will do that. I think all the earnings that we've seen from these earnings from these AI companies means that like they only have earnings because NVIDIA is selling a lot of GPUs. many of these companies make the nuts and bolts that go into the GPUs. The only reason they're having record earnings is because NVIDIA is selling a lot of those GPUs. So now maybe NVIDIA is going to be light on the whisper number, and they're going to beat by like $1 billion instead of $5 billion, which is what they did last quarter. But NVIDIA is going to get triple-digit growth. I'm pretty confident they're going to get 98 to 100% growth. And I think if they're that close to 100%, they're probably just going to go the extra mile to get that 2%. That's basically what they guide for, basically like 94%. I'm pretty sure they will get up into that triple-digit range. So the headline numbers will be amazing. The margins will be fine. I think Jensen's going to have to calm everybody down again on the nature of if this is an AI bubble, just because there's a lot more fears now. S&P down 0.4%. And I think Jensen's going to do what he has to do, but I just don't know how the market's going to interpret it. I don't have any fear that the numbers are going to be bad. Nonetheless, the stock might, tank the way that it has tanked every earnings. So Wednesday, we're going to get a much better understanding of what's going on here. What is the headline for memory? The headline for memory is 3D DRAM has been announced, which is moving data 6 to 7x more efficiently than HBM4 on measured silicon. This came from a company called, this is a company called OXMIQ Labs. I think they're a Canadian company. Yeah, no, they're an American company. Still an American company. Headquarters in California. This is what came out over the weekend. I'm just guessing if this is the real reason using HBF, but if it is, then down 10%. There's got to be some reason SanDisk taking that big of a hit. Are you buying the NewScale IPO next month? I do not know. I've looked at a little bit into that company. I know NVIDIA is investing in them. Quite frankly, I'm not excited to buy any IPOs. I don't know, man. We saw what happened with SpaceX. If SpaceX couldn't succeed on IPO, it's still below its IPO price. Why do we think any of these smaller companies are going to be massive successes? I feel like just being patient and waiting and letting these prices come to you is a bit better. And I think that's really the strategy for Anthropic. Robinhood right there, 107. SMCI, is that down today? SMCI down 7%. That's getting hit. Suraj, thank you for the super chat. ASST is doing its thing. Yes, it is. ASST is up 7%. Look, these Bitcoin treasuries have been down all year. It makes sense that they're getting some love because, Bitcoin's coming back. It's just they're still down a lot for the year. And obviously, Bitcoin has a long way to go for them to really break out. Bitcoin trying to get back to 79,000 right here. But look, if you think Bitcoin's going to 100,000 by the end of the year, the treasuries are probably going to outperform. And maybe they outperform the AI stocks if liquidity leaves AI into crypto. It's just, is this a liquidity grab on Bitcoin? Is this a fake out or is this legit? And it's feeling more legit given the price action is held. It's had its largest weekly close in history last week. So to me, that's positive. To me, the Clarity X stuff is positive. To me, the Cent Treasury buyback stuff is also positive. But price action will be important to see if it can sustain it over the next few months. And if it does, then it does feel like Bitcoin back into that 80, 90 range is just not that crazy. But we have to see if we can actually get there. Bitcoin 79 as it comes back. Moderna still down 8. Oil is down today, which is interesting for why the semis are getting hit. Oil is down too. That announcement, even if it hasn't helped bond yields, did help oil to come down. And still, you're not seeing the high beta names get some love. Still at 85, though, which I guess is not the best in the world. But it's down from 87. Are Visa and MasterCard up from Trump's disclosure? I don't think Trump's trades are affecting any of these stocks because they're not like Pelosi trades where he's buying $1 million of call options on this one stock that he's going to hold for a year. Trump's advisors, by the way, commented on it. They said the president has no interaction with how his money is privately managed, but we are disclosing it to the White House Office of Ethics for Transparency. So the reason I bring this up is because his people that are managing his money, they're swing trading this stuff, right? They're not Pelosi that has a thesis on Uber and she's going to buy Uber and hold it for the year, which then you could read into Uber going up because people are following Pelosi. Trump is buying and selling.
Like he's buying SpaceX, he's selling it. He's buying Boeing, he's selling it. He's buying Palantir, he's selling it. He's buying Visa, MasterCard, Moderna, he's selling it. Like he's probably selling a lot of stuff today, right? Or his advisors are. So, when you do 1,051 trades, those are not all buys. So I don't think any one individual stock will benefit from a buy because there's also a purchase underneath his buys. So the dude is trading. He's not necessarily like giving a stamp of approval to one or two stocks. But obviously it's absolutely crazy. We've never seen a sitting president. Dude, he trades 50 times a day. 50 times a day. Like, I mean, this is the president of the United States of America. He has the most power in the world to affect public policy and the economy and geopolitical relations. And his advisors are just swing trading his money publicly, openly. I mean, it's crazy. But it is happening. So, what do you do? But I don't think it's going to have a major impact on any individual stock because he's trading so many. Yeah, I know it's not him, but dude, there's something about rapport and, there's something about the sanctity of the office and just like not having your private wealth be traded publicly in front of the American people and just focusing on being the president. Like there's something about just buying ETFs and betting on America. It's kind of crazy to me, but nonetheless, that is how this is playing out. And, ever since the meme coin, I think we realized this was going to be a fundamentally different administration. At Broadcom right there, 362, and then Bloom, that is also down 4%. Yeah, maybe Matt Money. Yeah, there you go. Matt Money, our boy, who is the official White House quant, is actually the person who is trading. We had Ed Yordeni live just now talking about this Treasury buyback. Here's his take on what's happening.
Early to say whether this is actually working. It didn't seem like it did that much, had that much impact.
Well, I don't think that the expectations was. My expectation wasn't that this is going to lower rates. My expectation is that the Treasury made it clear they don't want to see 5% on the 10-year, and they are reminding us of what the Treasury did in 2023, not that long ago. The bond yield went from 4% to 5% in 3 months. August, September, October, November 1st, the yield went to 5%, and buyers came out of everywhere, and we saw the bond yield coming down because the Treasury announced that they were going to issue more bills, and that's basically what Besson said last week. And now this week, they're just reminding us, or today, they're just reminding us that they have $1 trillion in cash that they could buy more bonds with.
Yeah, and when the Treasury did that the last time, Scott Bessent was very critical of it, and a lot of folks thought that Janet Yellen was manipulating, almost acting as a fiscal player, and sort of spending down this $1 trillion TGA, which had built up, and issuing more bonds, bills versus bonds. Now that's the same thing that's happening right now. What is I guess somewhat interesting to me, Ed, is that the thing that is perhaps most anxiety producing among equity investors is, are we overborrowing and overspending on AI? And that's the same exacerbating factor on yields at the moment, I think much more than the U.S. fiscal situation. So it has at least the potential to feed on itself. And maybe that's why there was, that much alarm being voiced last week.
Well, I think higher rates are not putting a damper on the issuance of corporate bonds to finance the hyperscalers data centers. What is slowing down the data centers is political pushback, and also we've got the notion that there's a shortage of semiconductors, a shortage of electricity. So what are we really rooting for? Do we want them to spend all this money on data centers, or do we want them to slow it down? I think that it is slowing down, and that should help the bond market.
Given all those factors, then, do you think that the term premium will remain structurally high?
Well, I look at it simply as the TIPS yield plus the spread above the TIPS yield. And the TIPS yield has been running around 2.5%. The spread's been running around 2% or higher. We're looking at 4.5%. I mean, it doesn't really look like anything has really structurally changed in a major way when I look at the bond yield disaggregated like that.
these yields continue holding that 4.7. I think Yardeni's broader point is like, hey, the broader economy can withstand these bond yields rising higher as Bitcoin continues to get some attention right here. It's about $20 away from breaking its intraday high, 79,350, if we can get there. But once again, how much does the market believe in that, right? Like, can we survive in a world in which the 10 years 5%? Like, conventional wisdom would say absolutely not, and the Treasury would do something before that happens. But I mean, Yardeni's point is like, maybe we can handle it. And if we can, that's great. It's just, I don't really think we can, given the amount of interest we would be paying at that point. There was an interesting chart over the weekend that was really kind of, it makes you think about this Treasury debt. I think it's like 50% of our Treasury debt is owned by us, U.S. citizens. Let me see if I can get the chart. It's a fascinating chart, but it's like we kind of own the majority of our own debt. So, like, all the interest that we're paying is, a lot of that interest is going back to people in the United States, people that have a bunch of money that put into money market funds. They're getting that 5% risk-free yield. And it's one of those things where it's like, can we actually afford to increase rates if we're paying the interest to ourselves? Which is a horrible argument, but it's also like, we're getting to the stage of this debate where people are bringing up these arguments as like a way to kind of make sense of these yields. It's like, well, it's going back to the United States anyway. It's not like we're paying all of it to China. And I don't know. I don't know if that's sustainable enough, but that is an argument that's out there. Micron still below 900, bounced up from 887, did not really fall into the 880s that aggressively bit mine, as that's up 5% as well. Circular bond financing. Yes, exactly. If NVIDIA can circularly finance, is that a word? We're making up a lot of words today. 70. If NVIDIA can finance all their GPUs in a circular way, the US can do the same with our bond yields. I charge myself 13% interest. Oh my gosh. Ryzen 4979, Oscar 3290, as that's down 2% as well. Yeah, Bitcoin absolutely looks like a double top unless we can break through. If we get rejected here again, it would feel like a double top today, which means we might just be stuck in that 75 to 78 range for the rest of the day. But if we can push through, it feels like 80's on the way, which would be nice. During the 90s, the 10-year was above 5% with an average of 6%. The market went up the entire time. I've heard the 90s comparison. The difference is we're just not in the 90s anymore, right? We don't have the same type of debt that we had in the 90s. In the 90s, under Clinton, we had a surplus. Now we have 40 trillion of debt. It's like the same argument is like, oh, well, mortgages were 9%, 10% when people were buying a house in the 80s. It's like, yeah, well, homes were like $100,000, not $450,000 on average, right? So I just think we have a fundamentally different economy. Like, technology was not the biggest part of our economy at that time. So it's hard to use the comparable from 40 years ago, 30 years ago, even 20 years ago to make sense of why yields right now, make sense. And so I think that's it's just a little different. NVIDIA, are we somewhat green? Not at all. 209 as we continue to go down. Intel still down 4, CrowdStrike still down 2, S&P based on 0.3%. Do you like Cerberus? I was supposed to look at this over the weekend. I did not. Look, it's interesting, right? I think there's something really fundamentally strong about Cerberus, especially when it comes to inference. The problem is the stock was at 250 last week. It's at 187. Like, do I want to own that type of volatility? I kind of don't. Like, because what's to say it can't go to 250 next week and then go right back down to 180? Like, I am so tired of the volatility. And if I'm buying these assets that are this volatile, I want to be getting them at a decent price. I don't know. I think Cerberus at 187 is somewhat decent because it IPO'd at 180, but this thing has shown the tendency to go below its IPO price. So even if there's a fundamental thesis, it's like, again, do you want, part of the reason I like Broadcom, NVIDIA, TSM is because they're just too large to be that volatile. And if they actually fall 5-7%, they usually is a dip buy. Whereas, if SanDisk falls 5%, that's not a dip because this thing goes up 5 or 10% every other hour at this point. But I think Cerberus has a moat. And I think the inference, if you believe in a world in which inference needs to be faster and more supported, Cerberus is going to be a winner. Like, it's kind of obvious to me. It's just, again, what valuation are you willing to pay for that? CoreWeave, that's down 4% as that one continues to get hit. I have not averaged down on Bloom or Intel here. I mean, again, I want a real dip. Like, Intel's getting close to a real dip. The Intel bottomed at 79 in July. It's not that far away. So for me, it's like, all right, $5 or $6. Let's see if we get there. Bloom's got to give you something better. Bloom's got to actually get to that 180, 175 range to be excited about it. And also with Bloom's a lot more volatile than Intel. You can't really judge Bloom on the first 5 or 7% down because that can come back really quickly. So you need to see some sustained multi-level days of price action where the prices are depressed. And we just haven't seen that yet. Now, Moderna, that one's, had the past two ugly days, down 10% here. Maybe that's a dip buy, maybe not. It's up 60%, so I don't know. You'd have to take a gamble there. But some of the other semi names, you just like DRAM, right? I mean, this thing was at 57 on Friday. It's at 53 today. Is that really your dip, or was the dip closer to like 48, 49? Like, I think we have to see if these names actually give us way better opportunities right here. Microsoft 45. Bitcoin, are we still moving? We are indeed still moving. It hit 79.4. Okay, so Bitcoin just hit above its previous high today. I mean, if the AI names are rotating into some of the cryptos, it would be democratizing this bull market. We got to see. Let's see if Bitcoin can hit 79.5 at least. Then maybe moving up to 80,000. Mid, is it a good idea to keep rolling covered calls on stocks that are continuously rallying? You have to ask yourself if you think the rally is legit, right? So if you have covered calls on, I don't know, MicroStrategy at 100, and you sold them when it was at 95, and now it's at 124, you either buy them back and take your loss and say, I think this thing is going up to 150 and I want to participate, or you let the shares go because you were comfortable selling them at 100 in the first place. Or you roll it in a strategic way because you believe that MicroStrategy is kind of topped out for now and that you'll have enough time to resolve those covered calls before it continues its next leg up. I mean, people in the covered calls on Nebius were struggling with the same thing for the past 2 weeks. I don't think there's any struggles on that anymore because Nebius tanked aggressively from 280 to 203. And so you didn't have to worry about those covered calls actually getting called away. Not saying the same could happen with some of the crypto stocks, but obviously, if there's more volatility to the downside, you're not going to have to buy back those covered calls right now. But it literally all depends on, do you think the rally that the stock is having that you sold a covered call on is going to continue? And it's a hard thing to know. Like, you kind of don't know. You're using your best intuition to kind of make an assessment of it. McDonald's, as that continues to go green. App Lovin, are we below 300? Basically. I have not bought App Lovin for the simple reason that I told everyone last week. It's if they don't expand their TAM in Q3, the stock is donezo. Like, no one's paying the multiple for this thing if mobile gaming is the future. If they do expand their TAM in Q3, okay, it probably jumps up to 350, 370. So you missed the bottom. Maybe it jumps up to, let's call it 420. But it would be a good buy at 420, even if it jumped all the way from 300 up there, because they are now showing sustainable growth. So I'd be more willing to pay a premium, even though that premium would still be discounted relative to their growth, because the narrative is not broken. If you're buying App Lovin right now, you are betting that the market's wrong on the narrative and that Q3 will change the perception of the narrative. And I just don't know enough about the mobile gaming industry or App Lovin's core business to be able to make that bet. That was the takeaway I had with the employee, the former employee I talked to. I mean, he literally said, I will sell all of my App Lovin if in Q3 they don't show the TAM is expanding from mobile gaming to e-commerce. Because they've been saying that for a year, and the street's been like, okay, you guys have good growth rates, but we know that the growth is going to eventually collapse in gaming. We need to see the further expansion. And they just haven't seen it yet. And so either the street's completely wrong on this, or Q3 is going to have to prove that they know what they're doing. CoreWeave still down 4, Micron's still down 7. At least Micron's stabilizing a little bit right here. Coinbase is up 1, Rigetti's down 5. Your quantum names are also getting hit. We might see a little hoodie breakout if Bitcoin actually gets above 80. I know hood's kind of flat right here, but it did have a nice day on Friday, as that was up 13%. Innodata's down 8%. Yeah, some of the software names are holding. The rest are continuing to get hit. Corning, that's down. All your semis today are taking a hit. I've had enough. I'm selling the next rally. This is mental. You know, I think that level of annoyance is very real. And I don't think that you are alone, Victor, in saying that. We're still in greed, by the way, on fear and greed. I mean, the volatility can only get to some point where people are just like, enough is enough. Like, I'm just going to either go to cash or I'm going to buy the shit that I think is sustainable, which honestly, if you still want some risk, but sustainable earnings growth, it's the Mag 7. It's the Mag 7. Like, Amazon is probably not going to be as volatile as Bloom Energy and probably not going to outperform Bloom Energy, but you're just going to feel better holding it unless you bought Bloom at the lows, right? Because then if you bought a lot of these names at the low, if you bought Micron at like $200, you kind of don't care. But I think most people bought Micron at 900, 700, 800. And that's why this is annoying, because, you know, the alpha is not as apparent as it was when people are buying into strength. How do I buy leaps on your 3D printed hair? That's a good one. That is a good one. It's not 3D printed. It's just my natural. I am growing back the beard a little bit, though. Kind of like that we're bringing the beard back, dude. It's been a while since we've had the beard. So I like that. We have some more of the beard coming back into play. Intel, that's down 4%. All right, Bitcoin, you gotta do it right here. It's now or never. 79.2. This thing has got to break. It's not going to go to 80, but above 79.5, I think would be really exciting. Beard means recession. Dude, I do have gray hair. It's kind of crazy. At 28 years, I'll be 29 in a couple months. I have gray, like I legit have gray hair. And I'm just like, I guess that's the price of like having a lot of stress. Why do I have a lot of stress? Well, you know, markets, trying to build a career, you know, working 15 hours a day. Like I guess the price of ambition is some gray hair, but it's definitely there. It's definitely there. I don't know if you guys can see it. Can you guys see it? It's on this side. Oh, it's on this. You guys can see it, right? You see that one right there? That's gray. The price of being alive. Yeah, it's probably stress too. Trump is giving all of us gray hair. Maybe. But it's definitely gray. It is definitely gray hair. SpaceX goes red after that was pushing 137. And that is also down. Dylan says I'm 30 and my head is also covered in gray hairs. Yeah, I think it's, I don't know. I think if you're in markets and you're doing shit, it's kind of inevitable. Lucid, that's down 5. Hyperliquid strategies, the ETF, that's up 6.2, or not the ETF, the Treasury, as Nike also continues to get a little higher as well. Michael Burry's causing it. Oh my gosh. It's not Burry, it's the whole freaking nature of this vault. I mean, guys, we went through March, which was like, this is real money at the end of the day. It's not a game, right? Bitcoin 79.4. Like, it's real money that you see go up and down, you know, 6 figures, 7 figures in a day. Like, it's kind of crazy for a lot of people to see this stuff happen. For the institutions, it's like 9 figures up and down on a day. And then you had July, which added a few years to everybody. And then you had the recovery after the Leopold thing. And now you're kind of seeing that decline again in some sectors, like obviously the margin calls and liquidations across the world. South Korea, Kospi was down again last night. There's been a lot this year. We had the green. Remember when we were about to take over Greenland? Like, I forgot that happened this year. I thought that was like years ago. It's like, oh no, that happened in March. Like, or that was at the end of February. Right before the Iran war, Trump was like, yeah, let's take over Greenland. Like, there's just so much stuff that has happened this year. And then silver and gold went crazy, and then they crashed by 50%. I mean, this year has been one of those years, dude. It's been one of those freaking years. Are we going to tap 80K? Are we going to tap it? BTC 79,474. It's trying. Would you buy Bloom here? No. I would want to see this thing actually go down to the 180s. If you don't have a position, I don't think it's a horrible place to nibble, but once again, buying it around this range, you got to be ready for it to get back lower. I do think, though, a lot of the bleeding has stopped so far. Like Micron not really losing. The 880s is good. The hyperscaler is getting some love. That's good. Palantir 171 to 174. That's a nice rebound. ServiceNow is also up a little bit. Microsoft's up about 1%. So you are seeing some of the pain subside. Micron's actually back to 900, which is really good. And so, you know, if Micron's going to push 910, Bloom's probably going to get back over 200 right here. Wow, a lot of you guys have gray hair like me. Okay. At least you're not bald. I think I will lose my hair when I turn like 50. I think that's when my dad started losing his hair. So I have like 20 years before I lose my hair. But for now, it's here. Uber's that doing okay? It's flat. Netflix is also basically flat. Okay, there it is. There's the candle. 627 on BTC, 79.6. I mean, 80's got to be crazy, though. Let me try to see the order book flow. 80's got to be, like, hard to break through. Like, I kind of think it's inevitable it'll happen, but it's also got to be freaking aggressive, right? There's got to be a couple billion waiting at 80 to make that happen. Bitcoin miners reacting to it already. Iren, that's still down 3%. Which Bitcoin miners react? CleanSpark, I guess a little bit. Marathon, they still have like 9,000 Bitcoin, right? That's up 5%. 80 is more psychological. I agree. ELF is also making a nice move higher after Estee Lauder got that massive earnings print. Estee Lauder over 100. Dude, I don't get how the makeup company, the earnings weren't that impressive on Estee Lauder. It was like, okay, cool. Some people are buying lipstick. Like, really? The stock's going to outperform all the tech stocks now? It's still down 3% year to date. ELF's up 34% year to date. ELF deserves it. ELF never deserved to go down to like 50. Like, the growth was too good for it to get down there. But I feel like the tailwind in the past week was Estee Lauder, and then Ulta also going green here. And it's kind of weird that, like, it's almost like people are assuming this kind of lipstick recession where you buy the makeup stocks and reduce the volatility from tech. And maybe that's what's happening. But look, it's good. It's at least diversifying the bull market into other sectors. And if you're long makeup, you are getting some of that love right there. Same as Victoria's Secret. Is that up this year? VCSO, right? What's the ticker? Victoria Secret. Is that the ticker? VSXY? I thought it was a different VSXY. Year to date. Wow. Victoria's Secret's up 70% this year. 7 billion market cap. Bro. Okay. I guess I think these are more so being bought as defensives to tech. I don't really think the market's super excited about lingerie and makeup. Bitcoin. This is the moment. Let's see. Yeah, even with the tariffs, those names are still making their move. You're not seeing that in Walmart, though. Now, Target's up a lot this year because Target went down a lot last year. The Target actually makes sense. Target got to like $50 at one point last year. So Target got hit pretty bad. But Target also 75% this year, 170. They're also getting a bunch of tariff refunds, which is another boost on earnings for a lot of these retailers. So that could be helping them as well. Yeah, and the tariff money could be good as a short-term boost on earnings, but the fact that the market's willing to actually buy these names means they think it's, the market's being dumb, or it's like it's more sustainable than just the tariff revenue. NVIDIA trying to get back above 210, got a nice green candle, not massive, but it's something to try to get back to 210. SpaceX still at 1.6. The Google Verizon thing that came out this morning. We talked about this last week. Verizon will be implementing Gemini throughout the host of services that they run on GCP. By the way, someone just bought Moderna calls, 1.2 million, 180 strike November. So you've still got the Moderna bulls that are not giving up, and you're seeing it in the options flow. 134 down 7% today. As Bitcoin keeps trying. Vivek, thanks for the super chat. Should I sell or hold BEZ Bloom Energy 2x short ETF till day? BEZ is a 2x short Bloom? I'm down 40K in 40 minutes. Dude, you must have bought the literal top of this today. Yeah, you've had to bought it around 13, and then Bloom bounced from 185 to 197. Look, these are leveraged ETFs that are trading vehicles. They're meant to trade. So you would have to bet that Bloom doesn't start ripping further, which it is right now. And no one knows, right? No one knows. If the worst of it is done for the day, then I don't think we easily see Bloom back to 185, but we're going to have to see how the day plays out. Bitcoin, 79,745. It is trying. It is trying. Yeah, again, the 2x leverage ETF, guys, it's just, they're meant to be traded, but they're meant to, you got to get in and out of those quick when you see the move. Because the volatility, it's like people who trade SOXL, which is 3x leverage semiconductors. I mean, dude, this thing was at what, 250 at one point? This was at 300 on June 18th. And ever since then, it's been a short. And there have been some rallies in between, but I can't imagine holding a 3x levered or a 2x levered fund. A, because there's erosion in the net asset value, which is something really important to understand when it comes to this stuff. Or B, because it's like you just don't know if the volatility is going to, meaningfully be on your side in a certain given period. Ring the bell on 80. I will ring the bell on 80. If we actually see 80, that will require a bell ring. But we got to see if we get there. You double down and say a prayer. Oh my God. Dude, it's so funny. It's like people who are not religious, I mean, you buy a 3x levered ETF, have a 10% red day on that stock, you start becoming real religious real quick. You start becoming religious. 79,644 on Mr. BTC. Sailor already raised about 1.9 billion of cash by issuing common stock this morning. They did not sell Bitcoin, but they did sell new shares. And so because of those new shares, they now have a couple billion to go buy some chips. Here's a preview on NVIDIA's earnings as we have that on Wednesday. Not buy chips, buy Bitcoin. That's Jensen who's selling the chips. But I guess if you think of Bitcoin as like poker chips, they have money to buy chips. But yeah, they have another 2 billion ready to buy Bitcoin. And at least that's more liquidity and potentially more support on BTC.
Put out a report and estimates memory now runs about a quarter of what an AI server rack costs and expects that crunch to actually last into 2029 or even 2030, which is obviously good for the memory makers. The instinct, though, right away is that margins are cracking. That's why they have to raise prices. But this looks like maybe a plain cost inflation, and NVIDIA is pricing to protect its margins, not give them up. Gross margins in the mid-70s is likely still in reach. You can see the third point there, 74.8. So there is, attraction of going slightly lower. So the real question, though, into Wednesday's earnings print isn't collapse, is whether NVIDIA's pricing power fully covers the memory bill as Rubin scales. Meanwhile, NVIDIA is behaving less like a chip maker right now and more like a financier to help all that spending get funded. It's taken stakes across the industry this year in OpenAI, Anthropic, SpaceX, and lined up more than $500 billion in financing with 6 Wall Street firms to help customers buy its chips. It's also looking to license its way in. Most recently, and this is the news for today, the $6 billion poolside deal. So buying the software, more specifically IP and engineers behind the software's startup's open weight AI models. And then overnight, the information reported it's now in talks to back Perplexity at more than $30 billion. Perplexity and NVIDIA have a great relationship already. So this is just the latest sign that NVIDIA isn't just selling, we know this, the picks and shovels anymore. They say they're not a GPU company. It's funding the miners too, guys.
Christine, any thoughts as to why, given what you mentioned about margins and price hikes and scarcity, that the chip complex is down so significantly today?
The chip complex, or more specifically NVIDIA, has been used as a short funding for quite some time. So when you're looking for other pockets within the AI ecosystem, money has come out of NVIDIA. Why? Because people are just thinking this a law of large numbers. There's not as much upside with each earnings report. NVIDIA has consistently beat their data center revenues by $3 billion every single quarter. And that seems to be the expectation. So what is the major expectation that is going to put it past $3 billion? And so that's what seems to be missing from a lot of conversations, which is why people are like, well, maybe I won't go into NVIDIA. I'll use NVIDIA as a source of funding for all of the other AI players like the SK Hynix IPO, like the upcoming IPOs with Anthropic and OpenAI, like all of the momentum names from Coherent, Lumentum, and the memory names. So I think that's probably more of the issue. Not that people dislike NVIDIA and don't believe in its roadmap and its successes. It's more so they need money and it's coming from there.
All right, Christina, thank you. Christina Portsenevelis. Let's give you a roadmap for the rest of our hour. When we come back, President Trump slammed.
I mean, I think part of the reason the semis are down today, obviously, is as Bitcoin's getting rejected here, is this NVIDIA price hike. Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, most of these companies are getting their funding from NVIDIA. And so if NVIDIA's either they're getting their funding from NVIDIA or they're getting backstopped by NVIDIA or they're getting loans from NVIDIA. So if NVIDIA is continuing to raise prices, kind of begs the question on how much hyperscalers are willing to pay. Obviously, they're going to keep paying it, which is why their margin should not be an issue. But I mean, it definitely makes the market question, like, how sustainable are these price hike increases? And also, more importantly, is the aperture to want to pay this, the appetite, actually relevant? And, you know, I think the obvious answer is yes, because the CapEx stuff continues, but it nonetheless will create some pain, which is what we're seeing. By the way, Netflix, we had a headline on Netflix today. We pulled it up. Netflix executives have discussed making third-party streaming services available through its app, with recent talks reportedly focused on Peacock and Fox One. This would be very similar to Amazon Prime, that allows you to access HBO Max and Paramount through their platform. It's actually really good because there's a distribution of revenue that they can share with these companies. Oh, by the way, I almost watched the movie last night. I got through the first 5 minutes, then I got bored. But if Netflix tries to do this, I would be super bullish on it, because yes, it means their original content is not going to be watched as much, but it is an avenue of revenue for them beyond, you know, just paying for content and hoping that people subscribe to it. I almost watched Mr. and Mrs. Smith last night with Angelina Jolie and what's the guy's name? What's that guy's name? Brad Pitt. I almost watched that last night. I almost did. And then I got kind of bored. But it was on Prime, and I was like, at least there's something to watch there. I've always heard of the movie, but I've never watched it. 79.6 on BTC. Is boring? Dude, I was trying to find something to watch last night. Like, I really was like, give me something. And Mr. and Mrs. Smith was what I found. And I was like, screw this. I can't watch this, bro. This is so boring. Notebook is better. I have seen The Notebook. I saw it this year. Good movie. I actually watched the whole thing. It was a good movie. I didn't cry though. I thought I would cry, but I didn't cry. Verizon 49.71. Oscar, that's losing about 4%, still down 2. AAOI at least getting a rebound from 102, but still at 108. So what do we think? What do we think is going to happen with these yields? Like, are they eventually going to calm down, or is Bessent legit going to have to buy $1 trillion worth of this shit to get people to be okay with the 10-year? Again, you've got all these competing bonds with Broadcom and Meta, Google, et cetera, entering into the system, which is just not easy for the 10-year to necessarily compete with. Are you thinking of selling NVIDIA here? No. Like, look, at the end of the day, NVIDIA is still too cheap. As much as we want to complain about NVIDIA, it's too cheap. Like, I feel like if we saw NVIDIA 250, that would be a little bit more encouraging to sell. I don't think NVIDIA's topped here. Like, now maybe the market, you could make a case for topping here, then NVIDIA's obviously top. But if the market's not topped here, NVIDIA's, one of the best buys in the market just due to the nature of its monopoly power on pricing, and obviously all these earnings go back to NVIDIA. I look, here's the thing. If NVIDIA tops and we don't see 250, 300 anytime, I mean, this whole AI trade is dead. There is no way in hell that Micron and SanDisk and Bloom Energy and Intel are going to be like making these massive moves over the next couple of years if NVIDIA is not at least participating in that. It doesn't have to go to 500 tomorrow, but it's got to be there. Like, all of this stuff is still happening because of NVIDIA. So on days like this, it's annoying and the volatility sucks, but it's not a thesis breaker by any sense of the imagination on NVIDIA. CoreWeave right there down 4.3%. Reddit's still down 0.5% as well. Bloom almost filling the gap. That is fair. Google also, Bloom almost back to 200. Google having a decent day with the other hyperscalers. Google back to 350. As last week it was pushing below 335. What would it take to break your thesis? We would have to see margin compression be dramatic, aka too much competition. So like 75% would have to go to like 65% for me to be like concerned about their margins. And then, I mean, B, we would have to see token demand slowing down. And every chart I look at, I mean, there was a chart that came out on Friday on pricing for the H100s that's ticked up to like 52-week highs. And so you're just kind of seeing more and more momentum around the demand for token. Again, Anthropic and OpenAI don't have to win. NVIDIA will still win when it comes to open source. Anthropic and OpenAI losing is bad for all the CapEx that they've promised. That's a whole separate reason from intrinsically underwriting Anthropic and OpenAI success to NVIDIA, because it's not. It's just not tied to NVIDIA. Now, NVIDIA's invested in them, and obviously NVIDIA wants to see them succeed, but I don't think they have to win. I think any model, open source or closed, can win, and NVIDIA will still sell them the compute. So nonetheless, I think there's a moat to NVIDIA versus the model companies, but those S1s are going to be super important. This is what Sam Altman said over the weekend in a couple of clips around AI not having its iPhone moment yet.
And Codex, sort of unfortunately named, but that was not just coding. It could kind of do any kind of work, which confused people.
I'm confused by that.
Yes.
Okay.
As were many other people. What I think most people want is the sort of like single interface to their own personal or their company's AGI that can kind of help them with whatever they need. And then the ability with an API to build anything they want on top of it. And that is the platform that we should offer to the world. We're going to sell great AI. At every point on the cost performance curve, we will be the best. You want really high-end AI to discover science. That's great. You want really like inexpensive AI to do like, a massive amount of volume of work that maybe doesn't require genius level intelligence. We got you covered there too. And, thinking about this as a sort of, people talk about different ways, a new utility, a new commodity, whatever you want to call it. Like, people want to use a lot of AI, and they want it at a low cost, and they want it to be fast and to work well and have their context and be smooth. We got you.
And then this is what he said about being more of a product company or a platform company versus just selling an LLM.
I think we should be more of a platform company than a product company.
Okay.
Like, we will build products, of course. But
well, how many products do you have? Let's back up. How many products do you have now?
We just merged ChatGPT and Codex together. So we used to have like ChatGPT, Codex, and the API.
Okay.
And Codex, sort of unfortunately named, but that was not just coding. It could kind of do any kind of work, which confused people.
I'm confused by that.
Yes.
Okay.
As were meant that maybe doesn't require genius level intelligence. We got you covered there too. And, thinking about this as a sort of, people talk about different ways, a new utility, a new commodity, whatever you want to call it. Like, people want to use a lot of AI, and they want it at a low cost, and they want it to be fast and to work well and have their context and be smooth. We got you. And then there's like a single product, which is I need to ask the AI something. Eventually, maybe it's the AI should proactively offer me things, but you will have this interface, which started as a chatbot and now also has coding agents. And I think at some point will feel like a more persistent agent to this AI that is running on whatever you need it to run on. But that's it. I don't think we should go build every product category. I don't think we should like go try to compete with all of our customers. I don't think we should try to like subsume the entire economy. I think we should offer this platform and try to have 100 million new businesses and 8 billion people use it in all kinds of new ways. Built Codex.
Is that a compelling pitch to go public? That's the question. Is that a compelling pitch to go public? We're going to create a platform that 100 million businesses and 8 billion people use to access AI. I don't know, bro. Like that to me sounds like bullshit. Because there's a lot of other quote unquote platforms that are out there that are just as good as ChatGPT and are a lot cheaper than ChatGPT. What is the moat? Like, what is the moat? Like, why do people buy this? What is so exciting? At least Jersey Mike's has a moat. Like, their sandwiches are like proprietary sandwiches that only Jersey Mike's knows how to make. Like, you can get other sandwiches, but like, if you want a Jersey Mike's sandwich, you go to Jersey Mike's. Like, you know, there's a moat to their sandwich. Like, I don't know. What's the, like, it's just not a compelling story to be excited. Especially when they're like, oh, we want 100 million businesses to survive on our platform. It's like, you guys don't care about your businesses that are working with you already. You're competing with them. There's documented cases of you stealing their IP and competing against them. Same with Anthropic. So it's just one of those things where it's like, it's really hard for me to get excited to buy those IPOs or be excited or even be excited for the trajectory of growth. Now, obviously, I want to see the S1. That could change my opinion on it. But there's part of the reason they're not going public right here. I don't think that story is something you could sell public investors. I think they're going to need a few months to figure out how to mature that story into a way that actually makes sense. And again, not saying these companies don't deserve to be public or don't deserve to get liquidity, but it's just like, what is the plan? That at least, you know, Elon has a crazy vision and plan that people can buy into. SpaceX 136. Whereas I don't think you're necessarily seeing it with the Frontier Labs. Having said that, I think the stocks are going to pump. I just think you're going to get an opportunity post the stocks pumping. Also, you know, it is a little bit contrarian right now. For the people that care about being contrarian in the face of consensus, it is contrarian to be bullish Anthropic and OpenAI right now, because I think there is enough bearishness where it becomes actually going against the crowd to be bullish on them, which might actually be the bull case for the IPOs and the benefit to buying them. Because I think there's plenty of people like myself that are just really skeptical of what the IPOs will look like. And so maybe being contrarian makes more sense. Micron getting back above 900 as that's 904. Jersey Mike's is one lettuce recall away from the stock tanking. That is fair. That is a fair point. Let's see if we're getting any other macro news coming in. We don't have any major inflation data this week. I don't think we have PCE. We just have Kevin Warsh speaking on Friday. Oh no, we do have PCE. Okay, so on Wednesday we'll get PCE right before NVIDIA earnings. So that will be important. Russell, thank you for the super chat. Admit if OpenAI focuses on forward deployed engineers, business integration, and data sovereignty, does that start dissolving Palantir's moat? That starts competing with Palantir, and they've already started doing that. They announced something called Frontier 3 months ago. That was basically their version of building a forward deployed engineer organization that could implement AI in businesses. So they've started competing with Palantir for the past couple months. Yeah, I think that would be competitive with Palantir. The question is, will they be successfully implementing AI and, you know, doing it in a way that their customers feel happy about, secure about, confident about? I have some doubts on that. I think we've heard Karp basically talk about all these private conversations he's having with CEOs that are, you know, there's a reason Palantir got 200 companies to come to their institutional sovereignty event. A lot of them are just fed up with dealing with the model providers. And so I think they will try. But the question is, do they actually have it in their culture and DNA to care about delivering outcomes versus just selling tokens? CleanSpark right there, that's up 2%. Tesla continues to be right at 358. Intel, are we getting a little bit of a move up? A little bit, bounced up from 85, but still down 5% on the day as that continues to go red. Stock draft is cooked, dude. The stock draft is so cooked. We did this stupid draft at the top of the market. That's the issue. That's the issue, dude. Anything we picked, if it was in the AI space, would just get wrecked. Matt has the SpaceX short. Tanner has a couple software names. Steve has Zeta and Salesforce. I mean, anyone who picks software basically got the benefit and anyone who picks semis just got hit. I'm not going to be live for this 1 p.m. Bascent thing, but it will be very important. We will cover it on the close. I mean, look, I expect Bascent to kind of make the case for why the economy of Iran is crippling and they're going to officially take it out using whatever new sanctions they're putting in. I just kind of doubt how the market's going to interpret it to assume that like it's actually going to be effective. We've had sanctions on Iran for a long time. That's the thing. Like I was talking with someone over the weekend about it. They're like, dude, we've had sanctions for a very long time. Nothing is really, I mean, Iran has let their economy degrade and their currency inflate. So is this going to be the thing that gets the IRGC to be like, oh my goodness, we got to make a deal with the US? Like, is it going to get that bad? And maybe it is, but if it's not, then like, what's actually going to create the pressure? By the way, take a look at this. The 10-year yield. Look at this chart. Bascent took office. It was at 4.7. It got down to 4% less than a year later. What happens in March of 26? The Iran war. And we're back to 4.7. Like Bascent had this under control. Again, Bascent is really the one who's not even Trump. Bascent's responsible for this because he's Secretary of Treasury. We're talking about Treasury yields. Like he had this under control. He had this coming down. This freaking war just pushed it back up, which by the way, doesn't help when SoftBank plans to issue another $6.3 billion worth of bonds, 7-year retail bonds with a 4.3 to 4.9% coupon, again, offering more than the US 10-year. SoftBank, Broadcom, Meta, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, they're all competing with their country's debt. And the worst thing is SoftBank's doing this against their own OpenAI stake that they still can't fund. So it's like they're getting, margin. They're levering up their balance sheet with debt using collateral that they haven't even fully funded. That collateral is a margin loan against their OpenAI stock that, again, they fully haven't given the $60 billion to. Like, whatever financial engineering SoftBank is doing is quite remarkable, which is why the OpenAI IPO has to work for them. But yeah, nonetheless, it's obviously a bit ugly here. And that's where we're seeing some of the pain. Bloom back to 197, down about 2%. Did anyone buy anything today? Anyone take any buys or sells? I mean, if I was going to buy something today. See, the problem with buying today is you have NVIDIA on Wednesday. So if NVIDIA tanks, like if you think CoreWeave's a good deal at 84, that thing's going back below 80 if NVIDIA really gets hit. So I kind of think it's a little tough to buy the AI names today. I mean, the hyperscalers, there's nothing special with the hyperscalers today. I feel like if you own the Celsiuses of the world or the Verizons of the world, maybe today's the day to sell some calls because growth is down, value's up. Those are elevated premiums on value. I see some Blooms. I see some Amcors, which also got a hit over the past 2 weeks. Some Nebiuses, which unfortunately, this one kind of is at the whim of NVIDIA this week. I actually don't hate the crypto treasuries here. I mean, obviously the business models, I think, have been proven to be flawed in a world in which the underlying assets don't go higher. But if you're betting on a breakout on Ether, Bitcoin, like, I don't hate them. I mean, even as a trade, there's probably some room to have alpha. It's just, once again, is Bitcoin actually going for it, or is it, fake? I don't think it's fake, but I think price action will determine that, and that's where some risk is involved in buying those assets. Berkshire, that's up 1.4%. Apple, that is also up today. Yeah, I think it's ultimately a trade, right? Look, I think what we've learned from the crypto treasuries is that they have to be a trade unless you're willing to hold MicroStrategy for the next 15 years, which, people say that, but they're not actually willing to do that, or BM&R. You buy them into the strength as crypto goes up and you sell them somewhere during that cycle, because if you hold on the downside, obviously we see what's happening. The question is, if crypto winter is over and the downside is over and ETH bottomed at 1,800 or Bitcoin bottomed at 60,000, then the corresponding assets underneath them obviously have room to go higher. But it then begs the question, like, are the crypto names going to make that move. And if they're not, the treasuries are not going to do anything. But if they are, the treasuries are going to be probably better outperforming stocks than all the AI names. But like, that actually has to happen. I mean, MicroStrategy is up 40% from the lows, Like if you felt Bitcoin bottomed at around 60, MicroStrategy was $80. It's at 125 now. I mean, like it's a great trade. It's just, once again, is crypto going to have that meaningful moment? And I think the Clarity Act is at least helping try to make people think that could happen. Oracle, that's down 2.5% as well, as that continues to go down. I see some apps in here, some Broadcoms. Ondas is interesting. I've been trying to look at them more deeply. I really don't like the valuation on this thing. But I do like that. I mean, they're quite relevant when it comes to drones. They're not the biggest drone company in the world, but their drones are being used in a meaningful way. And you got 1.5 trillion lining up for a defense budget, which I'm not sure if they're going to get approved, dude. If the Democrats win any part of Congress, I don't know if 1.5 trillion easily passes. So that could be a headwind more than a tailwind for some of these defense stocks. But I also think Ondas it's not going to take much for it to get to 11, 12 bucks on a catalyst. It's just fundamentally, a lot of the dilution and buying of other assets that I'm not fully sure I understand what exactly they're doing in that ecosystem. Now, the stock was 50 cents a while ago, right? So it's still made a massive move in the past year. Zeta's still red today. Some of the software names have been relatively flat. Zeta is down 1.2%. Yes, Peter Thiel did buy a ton of energy stocks in Q2. 72% of his portfolio was energy, which feels like it could be the next and most obvious bottleneck. Vistra is the main one that popped up on most 13Fs, 136.41. Micron back above 900. Oh, wow. It was this day in 1975 where Queen started writing Bohemian Rhapsody. Is that true? Dude, that song, greatest song of all time. It's the greatest freaking song of all time. Like, my YouTube watch history is just a bunch of Queen music videos and Queen documentaries. Greatest freaking song. I think I'm going to hear that song like a million times for the rest of my life. That is crazy. Queen and Michael Jackson almost had a song together. Didn't end up working out, but that would have been. I actually found a picture of MJ and Freddie Mercury. I was like, all right, I need a poster of this. That is crazy. Qualcomm 157, that's still down. Apple 312 as that continues to go down. Yes, Holland did cut off his locks. That was big news in the soccer community. I took my hat off and unleashed the hair, and Holland cut off most of his hair. Yeah, I did hear the song of the week. What was it? It was Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. I don't know what you want me to say, but I didn't like the song, guys. I really didn't like it. That's my review. I didn't enjoy it. I really didn't. Didn't like it. I don't think it was a good song. Like, now I kind of hold everything to the standard of how Bohemian Rhapsody makes me feel in terms of like really hitting, and it's like, it just didn't. It's a great album, great band. I thought Time was one of their best songs, but Wish You Were Here, I was not. I just didn't like it. It wasn't me. Amcor down 5, Nebius still down 7. As that continues to get hit. No way you can't like it. I listened to Stairway to Heaven again over the weekend too, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like I'm so inundated with Queen. These other bands aren't doing it for me. Maybe over time. Oh, Jameson Greer. All right, let's get some clarity with this Canada stuff. As he was live 15 minutes ago, let's see what he had to say about these 50% tariffs.
Standing issues with Canada. After about a year of asking them to eliminate these, they said no. So we proposed some very tailored tariffs covering about 5% of what they send us. So pretty low amount in the grand scheme of things to have our own tariffs on those to counter out that retaliation. The Canadians came to us about a month ago. They said, we'd like to negotiate. We didn't ask for it, but we said, okay, we're happy to move forward in good faith. And we did, and they did. We progressed to a point Tuesday night where we had enough agreement among the parties to announce that we had found the way to a deal. Then we set about to finalize it. And then in the last hours, I think there were things that the Canadians just, they wanted more. We offered them the best access to the United States of any country in the world. Obviously, there's always going to be tariffs, and there's going to be that protection for American workers and companies. That's the president's trade policy. That hasn't changed. But we sought to accommodate the Canadians by giving them, by cutting tariffs in half on steel, on aluminum, and extensively reducing them on autos and even on things like softwood lumber, accommodating some element of that. Things that are sensitive for the Canadians. They wanted more. I don't know if it was political for them. It certainly doesn't make economic sense, but perhaps for political reasons. They have some by-elections coming up. I don't know, but they came in and they wanted more, and we weren't prepared to do that.
So many ways to approach it. You can see the markets today basically unchanged, even though the headlines in every paper are that the U.S. and Canada are spiraling towards a trade war. Maybe a year and a half ago, that would have caused more consternation. I think in the back of people's minds, Jameson, that we think this is just another negotiating step along the way to arriving at something. Are the markets wrong about that, or is that how you view it at this point, that an agreement will be reached pretty soon?
Well, Joe, I think the markets understand that this affects a very small amount of trade. Ultimately, I know the Canadians use histrionics like trade war and all these kinds of terms. We don't do that. I mean, the United States, again, we're set on our trade policy. The Canadians asked to come and negotiate with us a month ago. So, of course, if people ask, we do. So we don't have any issue proceeding with our trade policy as planned. And I think the market understands that. I think the market knows that at the end of the day, this is 5% of imports from Canada. It's 0.06% of our overall consumption in this economy. So there's no possible way it can really affect U.S. well-being, right? I mean, we've been having great prints on inflation the past couple of months, going down in June and staying flat here. Real wages for manufacturing workers going up. So we're on the right trajectory. The fundamentals are good, and I don't think this is going to affect anything. That's why I think the markets are shrugging it off.
I don't, the affordability issues, I think that's a red herring as well in terms of this. I can't imagine. But can you confirm that Prime Minister Carney, it was a heavy and medium duty truck, not easing to, was that the straw that broke the camel's back when the U.S. wouldn't lighten up on those tariffs? And some of that is Ford. I mean, the Journal points out you're really just cutting off our nose to spite our face in terms of Ford in this regard.
I think the thing to keep in mind is the only reason Canada has auto production in the first place, and we've talked about this before, in the 60s, Canada did a very Trumpian thing, and they came to the United States and they said, if you're going to sell into the Canadian market, you have to build here. And there was an auto pact, and at the time, the U.S. economy had a ton of leverage. They didn't think too much about the future of deindustrialization, and so they moved some plants to Canada. For a long time, for weeks, I've essentially been telling the Canadians, I'll see what I can do to deliver some results for you on a handful of these tariffs that are important to us for national security reasons. We don't change them lightly. They're very important to the president. They're very important. They've driven reindustrialization. And so we were able to come back with a package, and they said, well, we want the scope of that to be more. It's not just cars. It's not just passenger trucks. It's not just SUVs. It's not just pickups. We want the heavies. We want the heaviest trucks available. It's a sector with different economics and everything. And so that was just one of many things that the Canadians wanted an expansion on.
Okay, they're going to be going back and forth for probably a few weeks now. I think there will be a resolution. I don't think they're actually going to have 50% tariffs anytime in January. Like I really don't think it's going to be that aggressive, but both sides have to negotiate at this point, and both sides want to get the best out of each other. Amcor's still down 6 today. Bitcoin making another run for it again, 79.5, trying to test that 79.7 level. NVIDIA just said SpaceX is now adopting the NVIDIA Vera CPU to accelerate agentic AI at a massive scale. So you've got SpaceX not only buying those NVIDIA GPUs, but also more of their Vera CPUs. Also, NVIDIA says that Nebius is the first AI cloud to adopt the NVIDIA Grok 3 LPX Grok L3 LPX hit 3,400 output tokens per second. Nebius 205, little bounce from 201. As that is still red on the day. So you got NVIDIA making 2 announcements about SpaceX adopting more of their architecture with the CPUs, and then Nebius announcing or adopting this NVIDIA Grok 3 LPX. I mean, this is part of the reason why neoclouds like having a close relationship with NVIDIA. They get discounts on these GPUs. They get guaranteed capacity. And then they also get to try out some of the newest products that are out there, but not really changing any of the sentiment here on the semiconductor names. Today, Robinhood flipping green. Again, Bitcoin to 80 would get a lot of these names in motion. Many of them still red right here. Why does this administration keep making self-inflicted strategies? Markets would have been a lot higher if we didn't have all this chaotic messaging. I think it comes down to the Iran war. I mean, every administration has self-inflicting wounds, but it's a question of how aggressive are those wounds. And the Iran war is something I think Trump thought would be like a Venezuela situation, and it just wasn't. It was a lot harder to be able to make sense of what was going on in Iran. And, you know, Iran has been a lot more resilient. So I think the self-infliction now comes from ego, because it's like, we can't just give up because we've spent $35 billion here. The Iranians have to give up something. The Iranians are like, screw you guys. We don't really care. You know, we like that you guys are in trouble. The biggest thing to me that was most confusing is, again, Trump said, we thought they were going to launch a nuclear weapon. In my head, I'm like, dude, if Iran even thought about seriously launching a nuke, forget on the United States, but on Israel, which has always been the threat or the perceived threat, I mean, Iran would be blown off the face of this earth. Like, if they actually seriously thought of launching a nuke. So whatever intelligence they had either was BS, or it had to be so extreme that we had to get into this whole conundrum over the past 5 months. And I don't know if the American people fully believe that. And, you know, the midterms are going to be a declaration of if Americans actually believe this Iran war for our safety was needed, or if it wasn't. And if it wasn't, I think power might shift. Not to mention the kind of political pressure on data centers that's already shifting people a little bit more to the left. Broadcom right there getting a bounce off 359, 361 right here, right now. So I don't know. We're going to have to see. I think Trump thought it would be really quick. It didn't end up being quick. And, you know, now we're kind of stuck in it. I think we could end it pretty quickly. It's just both sides would have to capitulate. Trump would have to agree to not getting a lot of the stuff he wanted. The Iranians would also have to agree to not getting. So, like, both sides would have to give up a lot and maybe go back to how it was before this whole happened and have basically each side getting nothing out of the negotiation. But that would end a lot of this bond market stuff pretty quickly, because energy was 75% of inflation over the past 3 months. And oil would go down if that were to happen. Thomas, thank you for the super chat. I do not know when the next Miami meetup will be. It's definitely not happening this year. More likely than not, it will happen in 2027. We've got to do a lot of planning for meetups in 2027. But New York and Miami are on the list. And I will hopefully have more updates in the next few weeks. But we got to see. It is the 1 year anniversary. That's true. A couple people texted me over the weekend saying that's the case. Dude, when we were in Miami in the meetup, this was right after J Powell pivoted. S&P hit 570, and it was a blast because everyone just made a ton of money on Friday, and the meetup was Saturday. It was August 2025. Yeah, 550. We were at like 530 on Thursday, and then J Powell pivoted, and we got 550. And then it was just up and up and up until the soybean tweet. But we had a good 2 months of just green. So we got to see next time if we can get that same green going. And then the meetups this year, every meetup has been with red. Like August last year, Miami was the only meetup where we actually had a really nice green day. Well, Singapore, no, then Singapore meetup was actually before the collapse. Yeah, it was like a day after Micron earnings. The Micron was down that day, but like the next 3 weeks were where it actually ended up getting hit. Bitcoin 79.5 So it's still trying to get up there. What about Japanese and South Korean stocks? Well, I mean, Kospi is still levered to two memory companies that are levered to everything that's happening in the United States when it comes to memory. So the Kospi was down 3% yesterday. The Nikkei has been doing relatively okay this year simply because of all the money printing that Japan has been engaging with. That's up 26%. But a lot of the Nikkei just feels artificial based on rates in Japan. Not to say their companies aren't doing well, but, you know, their companies aren't like growing crazily like the AI names in the United States. So I think Japan is going to be fine, especially when we intervene and buy their yen. I think Korea is not going to be fine if the memory trade goes south. Like, Korea collapses if the memory trade goes south. There's no if, and, or buts about it. If the memory trade goes south, Kospi gets destroyed. There is nothing holding up that index other than Samsung and SK Hynix. And it's just like every time I think about what would get euphoric sentiment back to where it was in June when Kospi was 9,000 and SK Hynix was pushing all-time highs. It's like, I don't know what gets us there again. Definitely not in this bond yield environment. Definitely not with this Iran war continue. Like, what set of events geopolitically and economically would have to take place for us to just get back to that level of exuberance? The leverage is obviously wiped out of the system, and that hurts because if you don't have leverage on the way up, like, it's hard to compound, even though it sucks on the way down, but it's hard to compound those prices when buying pressure is just not that there because there's just not that much leverage. Having said that, the memory names are probably still too cheap for trading at the multiple that they're at right now. Squid Game season 4. Dude, Squid Game season 2 and 3, the worst sequels to a Netflix show ever. Squid Games was, like, I think it was Netflix's most original show, and I really enjoyed the first one. Season 2 and 3 were just so bad. So bad. And really, season 3 was the second part of season 2. Like, they just stretched it out. It just felt like a money grab. It didn't feel like they were actually making good content. 79.7 on BTC. But yeah, we're going to need something to make it happen. Yeah, next time we will not do New York in the winter. We'll do Miami in the winter and New York in the summer. I didn't know when we did the New York meetup last year in January, it would be like negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Like, I'm exaggerating, but it was the coldest winter we've had in 10 years. And I don't know why it got that cold, but it got really cold, and like it was unbearable. Like, it was like I was walking to the meetup shivering. I was like, this is kind of crazy. It doesn't need to be this cold here. So I think we're gonna get ready for another ugly winter. We'll make sure not to do the New York meetup there. Speaking of traveling, shout out to Andy who just tweeted. By the way, if you ever are watching the market open and want to tweet a picture of it and tag me, I'd love to see this stuff. Andy who was at the New York meetup in Paris right now. What time is it in Paris? Time in Paris, 5:20 p.m. Watching the market open. Appreciate you, Andy. Thank you for still keeping up with the show while you're traveling. But yeah, if anyone ever wants to tag me in some of these pictures, it's always intriguing to see where people are watching from. Dude, yesterday was so funny. I was walking down Jersey City. I was on the phone with my sister, and then someone recognized me from X. He's like, "Yo, Mick, can we get a picture?" And I had to hang up on my sister, and then I had to call her back. She's like, "What happened?" I was like, "Oh, someone wanted a picture with me." And she was like, "Shut the hell!" I was like, "What do you mean I'm lying? Like, someone wanted a picture with me. What do you want?" Like, I got to take the picture. Like, I had to interrupt our phone call. Someone wanted a picture. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? I had to be good to that person. So it was so funny. She gets a kick out of it. Dude, I think I told you guys, when we went to buy her car 4 months ago at the dealership, someone came up to her, was like, "Mick, can we get a picture?" And she was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening." I was like, "I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I don't know what you want me to do here." I should have sent you a pic when I was in Thailand last week. Yeah, you should. I love seeing these pictures. BMNR 25. Do you still own this? Yes, I still own this. My average is $42.35. So I'm still in the bag holding club with everyone on BMNR. Look, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's actually going to get up to that $40 range, but ETH's going to have to double from here for this to get to 40. So yes, I'm in this. It's annoying. I wish Hood was my only crypto play, but remember at the time when ETH was running, everyone was excited about BMNR or MicroStrategy, any crypto treasury. And the problem, like again, Per is your favorite example. Per is exploded because Hyperliquid took off because of a variety of catalysts that happened last week that we talked about. This is where buying Per at $7-8 made a lot of sense because it was a treasury on Hyperliquid. Hyperliquid exploded. Per exploded faster than Hyperliquid. It was a good trade. The problem with BMNR is that the majority of investors got excited about it when Tom Lee was buying Ethereum at $4,000, which obviously means the corresponding treasury was going to be at that $40, $50 range. And he bought the top, which means if you bought BMNR, you bought the top. Same with MicroStrategy. Like, it is what it is. It happens in life. The question, I think, for so many people is, can this actually reverse? BMNR has bought a lot of Ethereum since then. They have almost 5%. I think it's like 4.8%. So, ETH would have to really catch up to get there. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where everyone got rugged on this, and it sucks. Like, it's not fun, but I think the lessons learned from that is you don't buy into a treasury when crypto is topping, which begs the question, how do you know when it's topping or not? You don't. So you have to really use some judgment here on how much risk you want to take. There's actually at Singapore a decent amount of people at that meetup. The two stocks people were really long on in Singapore were Micron, and then everyone was crying about their bag holding of BMNR, which, is something that everyone had to kind of deal with. But it was a stock that internationally, because it's Tom Lee, dude. I don't think people remember Tom Lee last year, had the world of finance media in the palm of his hands. Like, he was finance media. Like, people, his videos would get 500,000 views, dude. Everyone listened to him because he was right for the past 4 years. It's just, unfortunately, he ended up getting this one wrong at the time. Long term, there's a chance where he's still obviously not going to be wrong about this. And it is what it is. Sometimes you have a bad call. It's just with his influence, a lot of people followed him into that call and ended up taking the L. But that's why it's kind of exciting, because everyone loves a good comeback story, right? Maybe there's a comeback right here. Bitcoin, highest we've seen all day. Can we get 80? Can we get 80 right here? The one he got wrong was the worst possible one. Yeah, it's fair. Like, the one, it's not like he got a stock wrong. He got a stock that was levered to crypto that was getting ready to go into a winter. So it was a mess, right? It's just also time passes along. And if the underlying thesis is not necessarily broken, as painful as it is, things recover if things are going in the right way. And in that time, yeah, a lot of people are pissed off, but if we're out of that crypto winter, I think it can be exciting. I don't know if ETH's getting back to 4,000 anytime soon. I think it will happen, obviously. I just don't know when. And that begs the question, is BMNR in a breakout stage? BMNR was at $13. It's basically doubled from the lows. So the question is, does it have that upside move kind of baked in? Google 350, as that continues to get up. Micron 897, still stuck below 900. Yeah, the Mr. Beast collab didn't help. But all that stuff from a marketing perspective was negative. If ETH goes up, it doesn't matter. A lot of that stuff just doesn't matter. And so this is really a bet now on, crypto having the breakout moment that it's been waiting for a year, which would be right on time when it comes to these 4-year cycles. 79.9. I'm going to try to get an order flow on Bitcoin and see how much is waiting at 80. But I would imagine it's a lot. Okay, at 80,000, I'm looking at 2,300 Bitcoin waiting to be sold. That would be a decent chunk of cash right there. That's like what? How much is that? That's 2,300 Bitcoin times 80. That's a 200 million worth of Bitcoin right there. There's a decent chunk that would be getting sold. Yeah, 184 million. But that actually doesn't sound like that's not $1 billion. That's kind of manageable if the volume's there. Amcor's down 5. The order books are kind of different on a variety of websites. The one I'm looking at is on CoinGlass, and that's giving me about 2,300 Bitcoin At 79,900, there's also 1,400 Bitcoin. So there's still a decent chunk of BTC. Didn't he do a new interview today? Yeah, he did do a new interview, Tom Lee, about ETH. I think there will be a lot more from his side on Ethereum if that's coming back. Let me see if there's a part of that interview I saw this morning. Let's pull this up. Yeah, this is where they were talking about their. Well, let's see if Bitcoin can still make its move right here before that. Okay, $70. This might be it. Maybe. It's been what, 5 months? Bloom just flipped green. Okay. Bloom coming back as well today. A little bit. Moderna is also trying to get back to 140. Do you think this is going to be a bottom on neoclouds? I honestly don't think anyone can say any semi-name, including Bloom or Intel, has bottomed if NVIDIA, is down 5% on Thursday. So maybe intraday it's a bottom, but SanDisk as well trying to get a little bounce off 1430. But a lot of this is still going to depend on NVIDIA. We were at 80s in May. Okay. So it's about 3 months then. Some of you guys might see 80K before me. These brokerages move a little differently. So we're going to judge it off Webull. Yeah, some of you guys are already seeing it. If you guys have already seen it, then I think it should show up pretty quickly. Let me check Robinhood. Let me see Robinhood. BMNR is up 9% today. Yeah, I'm seeing 950 on Hoodie. Hit 80K on Hyperliquid. Well, Hyperliquid's always a little quicker because they have a different order book that they've centralized. The regular exchanges sometimes is different. But I think we should see it. Meta's at 555. That's going green. What other big news that we have today? We talked about the Becent buybacks. Or the Becent buyback. So many of you guys say it's Becent, not Becent. I have to get used to saying Becent. Crude oil inventories in the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve officially fall below 290 million barrels for the first time since 1982. That's not really the best to see. Oh boy, what is this? U.S. eyes 7.5% China overcapacity tariffs before Xi visits the U.S. on September 24th. Dude, we do not need China tariffs. we do not need China tariffs. We don't need another stupid tariff war with the Chinese. Like the Canadians, we can at least go back and forth. The Chinese will just say they don't care. Goodness gracious. By the way, IBIT is the 6th most traded stock today by option volume, 900,000 worth of options on IBIT, which is the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. Yeah, I feel like the tariff headlines, they're just going to have to be interpreted by the market as like negotiating back and forth. Okay, it's not showing up on Webull. Some of you guys are saying you already got the notification for 80K, but I am not seeing it. On Robinhood, it's really close. It should get close on Webull. But it is not there. USS tariff announcement. Not via White House's speculation. Okay, but they told us this morning what they're doing with Canada, so we know that there are more tariffs still there. TradingView had hit 80,000. Did it on TradingView? Let me see. BTC on TradingView. I don't see it hitting 80 on TradingView. Hold on. I get to like the 5-second mark. No, it hit 79,959 on TradingView. I didn't see it. Dude, we are all just so okay, now it's $18 away on TradingView. It should get very close. If it breaks through, there it is on Robinhood. I see it on Robinhood. There's 80 on Hoodie. It was there for a second. We should see it everywhere else. We should see it. Do we ring it because it got there on Hood, or do we need to see it on Webull in front of everybody? I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes. It was there. It was quick. But the fact that it passed it means I'm pretty sure we'll get back above it. Unless that was the millisecond that we got. Zeta's still down 2. Nebius also getting, all right, some of these AI stocks, S&P also getting some green candles. Well, it is 11:30. Maybe some of this stuff got hit enough for today. Okay, I think we ring it anyway. I don't see it on Webull. I absolutely saw it on Hood, which means it did touch it. It was there. Ring the bell a bit. We won't hear it anyway. Dude, I'm going to buy some freaking AirPods after this market open. Or at least my regular AirPods. It's so annoying that I had to put on the headphones for you guys to. That's so weird. Why do I have to put on headphones for the mic to be working properly? Like, that's so confusing. And I don't like wearing these because it's like, it's too big and it hurts my ears when you wear it for multiple hours. All right, I'm ringing it. I saw it on Hood. I got the notification. I think we ring it, right? We ring it. It's so close, dude. It's about to hit 80 on Hood again. It's like $11 away. Oh my gosh, dude. It was such a quick 80, though. It was such a quick 80. You guys saying no, it's premature? Look, honestly, a real ring requires like it to actually hold it for more than 2 seconds. Like, so I feel like we should wait, but we got to see. Quit being a bell tease. Oh my gosh. Okay, in the meantime, do we have anything else going on? Someone just bought, wow, dude, Moderna. Someone bought 2 million of 165 calls for October 16th. You would think Moderna's kind of like had its run and people are loading up these calls like there's no tomorrow. We saw 180s and 165s today. Oh, this could also be hurting memory. Apple is reportedly testing DRAM from China, CXMT, and NAND storage from YMTC as Washington considers whether to permit the supplier use in Apple products sold in China. Now, again, Lutnick said last week that Apple, he didn't say this, but he basically admitted that Apple, he does not want Apple. This could actually be the major China headline for memory versus that whole HBF thing that we talked about. It could just be Apple procuring from other suppliers and the Commerce Department not having a full, like a full proposal yet, or dismissal of the proposal on if they're going to let them buy chips from Chinese memory companies, which, by the way, trade at 30x earnings, whereas SanDisk and Micron are like 15 times earnings. So I feel like that's actually a deeper reason for why we're seeing some of the red on SanDisk. SanDisk still red. It was down 10 today. It's now down 7. So you're actually getting a little bit of a bounce from 14, 15. Why would Trump let that happen? It's a good point. That's why it's kind of a stupid reaction. I mean, unless Apple has some really compelling reason, and maybe the reason is inflation. They're like, hey, Trump, if you don't let us buy this memory, NVIDIA back to 210, we're just going to raise prices on consumers. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's the argument, but I don't think they want them buying Chinese memory chips here. So if that's not going to happen, then this dip today is kind of not worth it. Yeah, Micron's like at 6.4 PE versus CXMT. All right, as we're waiting for this 80K on Bitcoin, let's go to what Tom Lee said earlier this morning.
And we could reach it by the end of the year. It could happen sooner. I'd say it's still one of these things that, for the moment, part of it is just making sure that the ETH narrative is actually clear with investors. And I think it's coming together. For instance, if the Clarity Act passed, I think we would have probably accelerated our timeline to get to 5%. But now with the Clarity Act, which isn't really entirely negative for crypto, but it does push out some things that people were hoping would take place. If that's in September, we'd probably rethink in September the pace of our Ethereum buys. And as for like, should we be more than 5%? I think it's today, given the sort of casting of the foundation's role, and I think it's now a much more sustainable sized organization and with a focus. And I think properly, these new entities that have been stood up are really doing a lot of the work that should do multiple things, whether it's improving privacy or really bringing enterprise engagement onto Ethereum. In that world, I do think that the notion of Ethereum and how it's going to be used is going to evolve as well. I think there's going to be a lot in the future. I think a lot of enterprises are going to want to hold ETH as an asset if it's something that's going to be used. And
I mean, if that narrative is correct, obviously we're going to see a lot more enterprise adoption. But once again, it hinges on that narrative actually being correct. I think it's more so about crypto getting an actual breakout to see ETH get that same breakout. A lot of these tokenization stablecoin narratives, they're part of the bull case, but they haven't been what drives price action. If we're talking about solely price action, it's crypto as an industry breaking out of the winter that it's been in. Wow, Bloom, look at that, 205. I mean, if Pelosi's in it now, I think you're going to get some more buyers just based on that. Bloom could go back to 190 tomorrow, given the volatility of it. It was at 250 a week ago. Now it's at 205. So if you're buying this name, you have to be ready for volatility. There is a fundamental thesis there that I think is strong. But Pelosi buying, I think, adds a level of people that would copy her. And, that could also be part of the reason that when it rises up, people are going to say, well, Pelosi's in, we should buy into it. And that compounds the excitement. Bitcoin now falling from 79.96. Again, that 80K that some people saw, including myself, it was literally for half a second. The fact that it's actually not holding above it, I don't know. I think maybe that doesn't warrant a lot of excitement yet for this 80K range, because it is not there. A couple of people saying they bought at 189. Yeah, I mean, look, with the intraday volatility on this, Bloom is just one of those. Bloom was at 330 at one point before July. I mean, this is a name when it runs, but when it dumps, it dumps. It fell from 210 to 185 today. So I think you have to be ready for that type of volatility. But it will move very quickly. It's definitely a lot more volatile than Intel 87, that one getting a bounce from 85. Do you like Meta around 550? Yes, but I want to see how this trial plays out. I don't think you have to be in any rush for Meta here. Let's say the trial goes perfect and Meta's back at 620. It's like, okay, you missed it at 550, but at least a big risk is off the table. If the trial goes bad and Meta goes back to the low 500s, then you have a really good opportunity if you assume the discount rate on the trial is not that big of a deal. So there's no FOMO here happening with Meta. They've got weeks of a trial. It was at 540 last week. Got to 550 on Friday. I mean, price action here is just super contingent on what happens with the trial, but it's not something that creates a ton of excitement up or down. Robin right there, 108.40. Is oil down? Maybe that's why we're seeing some pressure. Oil is down to 84.30. Was at 85.50. How about this 10-year? Can we at least go below 4.7? We're at 4.696. Okay, so at least you have two corresponding macro assets that are down, which is somewhat helping the AI stocks come back. And quite frankly, if the AI stocks are coming back, maybe Bitcoin takes a little bit of a breather. If the new algo is going to be short crypto, long semis, and vice versa. I would really hope for that to be the new thing. Moderna trying to get back into 140. I would really hate for the short semis, long software trade, and vice versa to be crypto in the place of software. That would be very annoying, especially because they're kind of all high beta together. They should move with each other. But we have to see. I didn't even see 80K on Robinhood Legend. Yeah, I saw it on my phone, just right next to me real quick, but it really didn't hold it enough to celebrate it, I would say. So we're going to have to see. All right, guys, I don't think you get the bell for all the no bellers. you aren't going to get the bell until market close today. But you're probably happy you didn't have to experience the bell, but there's a part of you that's probably sad that you didn't get to experience the bell again. It's just the bell is loud. Yeah, but that's the point. Wakes you up. It's Monday morning. Got shit to do. We got money to make. Except when it's red, it's money to lose. Like, we at least got to be excited if we're going to lose some money. It's important. Yeah, these headphones got to go, dude. These headphones, I can barely even hear myself, to be honest. So I'm going to try to get my AirPods. I was so mad I left my AirPods at home, dude. Like, I got back to my apartment. I was like, oh my goodness, it's the one thing. Like, I have my AirPods in all day. And I left those at home. Applied Digital 27, that goes green. Nebius, I mean, is it crazy to say it could recover back to like 212 today, 208 right there? Well, technically we'd have to get to like 218 to recover, but